Hello and welcome. I'm Leigh Ann Gerrans and you're watching Al Arabiya News. These are our top stories. President Trump meets with Jordan's King Abdullah, imploring him to take in Palestinian refugees as part of the US Gaza takeover plan. It comes as Trump promises all hell will break out with Hamas if all the Israeli hostages are not returned by this weekend. A 25% raise on steel and aluminium imports escalates fears of a trade war as the EU says it will respond with firm and proportionate countermeasures. And US Vice President J.D. Vance marks his first foreign trip to the Paris AI Summit as he challenges Europe's approach to artificial intelligence. To our top story, and in the last hour, US President Donald Trump has sat down with Jordan's King Abdullah at the White House to discuss his plans to relocate Gaza's refugees. It's believed Trump could withhold aid to Jordan and Egypt if the two nations do not oblige to his takeover plans. Currently, Jordan receives around $1.45 billion a year in US military and economic support, making them the top recipients of aid in the Middle East. We can now speak to the former Jordanian minister, Hussein Majali. Good evening, Mr. Majali, and thank you so much for joining me. Much appreciated. Details are still emerging from this meeting, which is taking place in Washington. Can you give us your initial thoughts on the discussions that could possibly be underway?
Good evening to you and to all your viewers. First of all, as you've stated, it's an ongoing meeting now. Nothing has yet came out of the meeting, but the Jordanian position that His Majesty holds on behalf of Jordan and the Arab community as a whole, that there is no possible way at all to accept any Palestinian that has been uprooted from Gaza or the West Bank to any Arab country, let alone Jordan. The question is not accepting or not accepting. The question is uprooting people of their own country, of their own soil. This is unheard of. There are no international convention, no an international law that allows that. There is nothing, no United Nations agreement accepts such a thing. This is as bad as genocide, and Jordan has its stand regarding this. And I know the U.S. administration has, as you've stated, the economic aid and the military aid and all that, but also Jordan, has a very strong relationship with the United States, not only with the administration, with Congress, with the Senate, with think tanks, with all major influencers in the United States. His Majesty is highly regarded there. And I really believe that His Majesty is the most qualified to speak on behalf of the Arab community, because he's right in the middle of this turmoil in the area. It has really caused a turmoil. This is unheard of, completely unheard of to date, throughout the inception of humanity. Unheard of, to uproot people and push them away from their soil.
As you say, this is unheard of.
Please, go ahead.
It could be seen as genocide. What are your main concerns if something like this does go ahead and Donald Trump does put pressure on? What would this mean for the Palestinian people? But will it uproot Jordan and will it destabilize the country possibly?
Well, most definitely we are not worried about destabilizing Jordan. Jordan is a very strong founded nation based on rule of law, constitution, and we've been We've been around for thousands and thousands of years, and as a kingdom for 102 years, 103 years, sorry. So there is no worry about destabilization. What we worry about, what will become of the Palestinians? The statements that the President of the United States have stated are extremely horrifying. That if they don't do this, hell will break loose. And very unfortunate that Israel is supporting all that. This is a country that in the International Court of Justice, there are 3 proceedings. 2 have done. One is going on in the proceeding that accuses it of genocide. The ICC have put its ex-defense minister and its current prime minister on the arrest list. And it seems that whenever comes to any nation in the world, international law applies. Only when it comes to the Palestinians, international law does not exist. This is a duty of all the world, not only His Majesty and Jordan and the Arab world. It's the moral responsibility of all humanity to stop such idiotic actions.
As you say, it is a moral responsibility, but tell us about the relationship between Jordan and the US. Really, they have been long-time allies, but could refusing Donald Trump's demand trigger a diplomatic crisis? It's a very fine line to tread at the moment.
Ma'am, I will tell you something. The relationship between Jordan and the United States at a governmental level, at a leadership level, at people's level is stronger than to be shaken by anything. We have an excellent relationship, and I am sure it will stay excellent relationship. The American people are good people. They are not bad people. They are really excellent people. I don't believe at all that we will see something like that. There might be a bump here, a bump there. Our cooperation is immense. We have military intelligence on security affairs such as drugs, counter drugs, human trafficking. We have a vast array of arrangement. Mind you about the special relationship strategic between Jordan and the United States. This will never be stabilized. This will never be shaken because there are 2 nations behind it. It's not only 4 people or 2 people or 1 person.
Hussein Majali, former Jordanian minister, thank you so much for your time this evening. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. That's very kind of you. Thank you.
Yesterday, President Trump told reporters the Gaza ceasefire should be cancelled and all hell would break out if Hamas did not release all the Israeli hostages by noon on Saturday. Here's a reminder of just what he had to say.
Well, I would say this, and I'm going to let that be because that's Israel's decision. But as far as I'm concerned, if all of the hostages aren't returned by Saturday at 12 o'clock, I think it's an appropriate time. And after that, I would say all hell is going to break out. And I don't think they're going to do it. I think a lot of them are dead. I think a lot of the hostages are dead. I think it's a great human tragedy.
We can now go live to Herzliya, just north of Tel Aviv, to speak to author and Middle East correspondent Jotam Confino. Jotam, thank you so much for joining me. I was just speaking to a former Jordanian minister there, and he's heavily criticised Trump's plans, obviously, to move people from the Gaza Strip into Jordan. What's been the reaction from what we've heard from Donald Trump where you are in Israel?
So I can tell you that the Israeli Security Cabinet just finished a 4.5-hour meeting where they were discussing specifically Donald Trump's Gaza plan, but also Donald Trump's threat to let all hell break out if all of the hostages aren't released by Saturday. And my understanding, according to the sources that I speak to, is that the Security Cabinet is in agreement with Donald Trump. And they also say that the remaining hostages have to come out by Saturday. I'm not really understanding fully if they mean all of the living hostages in this first phase or also those who are dead. That's not really clear from the information I'm getting. But they're also saying that the negotiations over the implementation of phase 2 has now been stopped because Hamas is violating the ceasefire by delaying the release of the hostages. So that part of the negotiation has now been frozen, according to my sources.
OK, so the ceasefire is obviously fragile and we are not sure what's going to happen going forward. But let's just go back to Jordan's king. He's currently in the US now meeting President Donald Trump. What can we expect from that? And what more, could happen with aid to Jordan too?
Well, first of all, it's important to understand how important the relationship is for Jordan, especially between Amman and Washington. Amman receives $1.3 billion a year in aid from the United States, and that's expected to rise to over $2 billion a year. And in addition to that, Jordan is buying a lot of military equipment from the United States, including F-16 fighter jets, and they're also getting help with securing their border crossings. So this is really, really important for Jordan to continue to please Donald Trump. But of course, the king is not going to allow Donald Trump to deport 1 million or even 2 million Palestinians from Gaza to Jordan. That's not going to happen. Jordan is not for sale in that sense. So he really has a very difficult task ahead of him tonight when he speaks to Donald Trump to try and figure out if there's some wiggle room, some way they can meet on the middle, because currently they're miles apart. Jordan has already said they will not agree to any Palestinian refugees from Gaza. And Donald Trump has said, well, you have to, otherwise I'm going to probably take your aid.
Yes, a tricky balance for them to both strike during those talks. But Jotam, where does all of this leave the already really fragile ceasefire deal? And it could be a real concern for people whose loved ones are still hostages being held by Hamas.
It really all comes down to Hamas wanting to play psychological games. That's the only way to see this, because Hamas is claiming that Israel is violating the ceasefire agreement on several different ways, including halting aid and delaying having Palestinians from southern Gaza going back to northern Gaza. Now, those two things are not true. First of all, the reason why Israel delayed the moving of Palestinians from southern Gaza to northern Gaza was because Hamas violated the ceasefire by not releasing civilian women before releasing civilian female soldiers. And secondly, aid is coming into Gaza. More than 12,000 trucks with humanitarian aid has come into Gaza in the past 3 weeks alone. So Hamas is now really trying to play games here. They're trying to see how much they can push and terrorize Israel, but they're playing with fire. I really think they are, because they are technically giving Netanyahu and his government a way out to say, well, Hamas is breaking the ceasefire and we have Donald Trump's backing now to let hell loose. And that is really dangerous.
Yes, indeed. Jotam Confino, author and Middle East correspondent in Herzliya. Thank you so much for joining me this evening.
Thank you.
The Canadian government says it will retaliate a clear and collaborative way to the latest tariffs announced by President Trump after he confirmed he is imposing a 25% import tax on steel and aluminium entering the US from the 12th of March. Canada is the top exporter of both metals to the US. But Trump believes these policies will help protect jobs and industries stateside, even if it raises prices for the ordinary Americans. Benji Haya has this report.
That'll be it.
Donald Trump, at the swipe of a pen, once again inflicting sweeping changes on the US economy and that of its rivals and allies.
It's 25% without exceptions or exemptions, and that's all countries, no matter where it comes from, all countries. If made in the United States, however, United States of America, there is no tariff, zero. So if it's made in the United States, there is no tariff. All you have to do is make it in the United States. We don't need it from another country.
Amongst the hardest hit, America's neighbour to the north. Canada exports over the border 6 million tonnes of steel products and more than 3 million tonnes of aluminium products per year. That's more than every other country combined.
Imports of Canadian steel and aluminum create thousands, if not millions, of jobs and support families across the United States. We have been doing things together in an extraordinarily integrated way for many, many years, and we will look to continue to work with our closest ally and partner. We should be doing more together, not fighting with each other, but Canadians will stand up strongly and firmly if we need to.
But that's not all. The US president also promised a new package of reciprocal tariffs that would be unveiled this week. Not just metals. These could apply to any product.
We don't want it to hurt other countries, but they've been taking advantage of us for years and years and years, and they've charged us tariffs. Most of them have charged us, almost everyone, I would say, almost without exception. Definitely. They've charged us and we haven't charged them. And it's time to be reciprocal. So you'll be hearing that word a lot, reciprocal. If they charge us, we charge them. If they're at 25, we're at 25. If they're at 10, we're at 10. And if they're much higher than 25, that's what we are too. So that's having to do with everything. That's not just steel and aluminum.
We deeply regret these decisions and announcements. The EU sees no justification for the imposition of tariffs on our exports, which is economically counterproductive, especially given the deeply integrated production chains established through our extensive transatlantic trade and investment ties. Tariffs are taxes, bad for businesses, worse for consumers.
It's a big deal. It's a big deal. This is the beginning of making America rich again.
But it seems no nation, friend or foe, is immune from the White House's tariff tactics, and the trade wars show no signs of abating. Benji Haya, Al Arabiya News, Washington.
Let's take a look at some of the other stories making the headlines today. Moscow and Kyiv have attacked one another's energy infrastructures overnight, sparking an alleged fire at a Russian oil refinery and power restrictions in Ukraine. 9 towns and villages in the eastern Poltava region were disconnected from gas supplies. It comes ahead of meetings between the US and Ukraine to end the 3-year war. Now, President Trump has announced the reintroduction of plastic straws after the last US government attempted to phase out the use of single-use plastics. Trump told White House reporters that paper straws don't work, and he signed the executive order. Assisted dying cases in the United Kingdom may not need to be signed off by a High Court judge, according to a new bill that's been proposed. Labour MP Kim Leadbeater, who spearheaded the original campaign, has suggested a panel of experts would examine each case individually and then decide whether permission is granted to allow assisted death. And Google has officially changed the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America for those using the platform inside the US. It follows an executive order by President Trump. Anyone outside of the United States will actually see both names. It's day one of a new job for Lord Peter Mandelson today, who starts his stint as the UK ambassador to the US. Lord Mandelson has said the United Kingdom wouldn't necessarily agree with every detail of President Trump's agenda, but it was important to have a strong and clear mandate for change. Here's what he had to say about his new role.
I'm speaking to you from the ambassador's residence, a building that symbolizes decades of friendship, hosting countless presidents, prime ministers, politicians, royalty, and many ordinary American citizens. I'm crystal clear. The UK has no closer ally than America. Looking ahead, President Trump's administration is shaping up to be one of the most consequential periods in modern America.
Ollie Barrett has a reaction from London.
Well, Peter Mandelson certainly knows that he has his work cut out. He's been giving a series of interviews, many of them to American media, to try and make the case directly to some of those people in the Trump administration who might have had concerns about him in this role, and also some concerns about previous comments that he's made. He has said that he now feels he was ill-judged and wrong with some of the ways he previously described Donald Trump before he became the UK ambassador to the United States. He had previously described him as a bully and a danger to the world, but now he spends a lot of his time in these interviews referencing that mandate that he says President Trump has secured and that must be respected. Now, Peter Mandelson will certainly be trying to foster personal connections and relationships. He knows that they are very important when it comes to dealing with Donald Trump and the people around him. We've seen all sorts of concern here in the UK about tariffs, for example. Lord Mandelson says that there is a case to be made that the UK can maybe avoid some of the tariffs that are being meted out to other countries. He has been making the case, as have other government officials and ministers, that the UK, when it comes to the trade in goods between the UK and the US, is actually not in deficit in the way that many other countries around the world are. And that is a case that they will continue to try and make, and you would expect will be a key part of Lord Mandelson's stint, certainly in the early days of his time as the UK ambassador. We also know that he will be considering exactly how he can foster further meetings between Keir Starmer and Donald Trump. They have spoken several times on the phone recently, but Downing Street not giving us any timeline for when Keir Starmer might visit the United States. But we also know that Donald Trump is very fond of the UK's royal family. So Peter Mandelson will be involved in working out exactly how the UK's royals can be deployed for positive effect on the UK-US relationship. But it will be a difficult task for Lord Mandelson as the new US ambassador, not least because of the unpredictable way that Donald Trump sometimes operates as president. Peter Mandelson will be well aware that at any time of day or night, Donald Trump may take himself to social media platforms, may give an interview, may talk in the Oval Office and set out policy changes that could have a huge impact on the UK, that Lord Mandelson and his colleagues and the government here in London may well have to react to. So, as I say, Lord Mandelson will be very clear in this new post that he has a difficult job on his hands, but he insists that he can boost the UK-US relationship, particularly at a time when Keir Starmer and Donald Trump up to now seem to have been getting on very well, with Donald Trump making some positive personal comments about that particular relationship, and Lord Mandelson will be hoping that that's exactly the kind of thing he can encourage in his new post.
Ollie Barrett in London there. Thank you very much. Let's take a look at the top business news. Luxury group Kering's fourth quarter sales were hit by a continued slump at its main brand Gucci. However, a slight improvement in the group's performance in China and the US is buoying investors. Shares in the French group jumped 5% in early trade as investors seized on hope the company had reached an inflection point. A group led by Elon Musk has made a $97.4 billion bid to buy OpenAI just months after he sued the AI startup. Elon Musk co-founded OpenAI but later fell out with his colleague and the current CEO, Sam Altman, before the company released ChatGPT in 2022. In reply, Altman posted on X, "No thank you. but we will buy Twitter for $9.74 billion if you want. Turning to the sports news now. And the former vice president of UEFA, Luis Rubiales, has told a judge that Spanish player Jenny Hermoso gave him consent for a kiss after the 2023 Women's World Cup. The former Spanish Football Federation president to testify in court today after being accused of sexual assault and coercion for allegedly trying to downplay the kiss. Elsewhere, Hermoso testified that she felt disrespected by Rubiales after winning the World Cup. Rugby legend Warren Gatland is set to leave his role as Wales head coach after a record 14 successive Test match defeats. Gatland is contracted until the 2027 World Cup, but is he now set to leave during the Six Nations tournament? Cardiff's Matt Sherratt takes over for the rest of the competition. And the funeral of former Manchester United player Denis Law has taken place in his adopted city today. Ex-players like Ruud van Nistelrooy, Gary Neville and Brian Robson and legendary manager Sir Alex Ferguson attended Manchester Cathedral to pay their respects to the former Scottish striker who had been battling dementia, passing away at the age of 84. Now, US Vice President J.D. Vance was in Paris today for the final day of the AI summit. In his first foreign trip since taking office, Vance delivered a speech on Europe's approach to artificial intelligence and how it moderates its content on big tech platforms. Also in attendance were European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, who launched Invest AI, an initiative to mobilise €200 million for investment in AI, and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who spoke about the need to invest in reskilling people for an AI-driven future. Our correspondent Ross Cullen is in Paris, where the conference has been taking place. Ross, good evening to you. Thank you for joining me. J.D. Vance says Europeans risk killing AI with their red tape. What were the main takeaways from his speech, and what were the main challenges that he did reference?
Good evening, Leigh Ann, Good evening, Leigh Ann, here from Paris, where J.D. Vance has been speaking this afternoon. He met Emmanuel Macron, the French president, for one-on-one talks. But before that, he gave a speech at the AI conference, which has been taking place in the Grand Palais. You might be able to see it behind me, one of the most beautiful buildings in the centre of the French capital. He said that, quote, excessive regulation of the AI sector could kill a transformative sector just as it's taking off. He said that AI systems developed in America will be free from ideological bias, and he went on to criticise countries that would potentially use AI for what he said was, quote, authoritarian censorship, saying that the American idea of AI is that it can be a vehicle for free speech. There was no doubt about his speech, though, wanting to make sure that America, the United States, is centred as the #1 place for AI development, saying we're willing to work with other countries, but the home of big tech, the home of little tech, will be in the United States. It was also a chance for many of the European leaders here, many of the world leaders who've been attending the AI Action Summit, to meet Mr. Vance for the first time. The 40-year-old, on his first trip overseas since the inauguration last month, had one-on-one bilateral meetings with the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, along with meeting Emmanuel Macron a bit earlier.
Ross, the US and the UK did not sign the summit communique. Do we know why they decided to not do this, like other major countries, which include China, India, Japan, Australia, and also Canada?
Yeah, so on Monday we had these rumours when the declaration was starting to be drawn up that the United Kingdom and the United States might be backing out of signing that joint communique. Now, the United Kingdom didn't send the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer. They did send their Technology Minister, Peter Kyle, and he said that the United Kingdom wouldn't sign up to any agreement that wasn't 100% in Britain's own interests. And if you were reading between the lines of JD Vance's speech here to the AI Action Summit, when he was criticising, railing against excessive regulation, excessive regulatory frameworks being put in place, you can understand perhaps the United States not signing up to that declaration, especially if you view that in the wider context of the Trump administration starting to withdraw from many international institutions and international agreements, such as the World Health Organization and the 2015 Climate Accord signed here in Paris.
Ross, Elon Musk isn't even there, but he's been making headlines due to his feud with his former old friend, Sam Altman. In 30 seconds, just wrap up exactly what's been happening between the two of them.
Well, Sam Altman has just been at one of the key startup events just in the east of Paris in the last couple of hours alongside Emmanuel Macron. And we woke up this morning to that enormous bid, the nearly $100 billion bid from this group of investors, including Elon Musk, to buy OpenAI, which makes ChatGPT. Sam Altman, the current head of OpenAI, replied on Twitter with a post on X saying that, well, I'm not interested in you buying OpenAI, but I will happily buy X from you, Elon Musk, for $10 billion, to which Elon Musk himself replied on X saying, you're a swindler.
Ross Cullen, I shouldn't giggle, but yes, that was the chat between the two friends on X, which was known as Twitter once. Ross Cullen in Paris, thank you so much. And a reminder of our top stories. President Trump meets with Jordan's King Abdullah, imploring him to take in Palestinian refugees as part of the US Gaza takeover plan. It comes as Trump promises all hell will break out with Hamas if all Israeli hostages are not returned by this weekend. A 25% raise on steel and aluminium imports escalates fears of a trade war as the EU says it will respond with firm and proportionate countermeasures. And US Vice President JD Vance marks his first foreign trip to the Paris AI Summit as he challenges Europe's approach to artificial intelligence. And that's all from us on W News. Thank you so much for joining us. The Dressing Room is coming up next. And don't miss Tom Burges Watson with GNT. Good night and thank you for watching.
At Al Arabiya News, we go beyond the headlines.
From the latest breaking news to in-depth coverage of global events.
We're not bought or sold. Nobody owns us.
The loss of life, the destruction of property. The conflicts are such a terrible thing.
Context and analysis to help you see the full picture.
The world is in a very dangerous place.
Join us on Al Arabiya News.
It's very impressive.
Where knowledge meets perspective.
Welcome to the Dressing Room with Al Arabiya News. First of all, Carlton, you were late.
Yeah,
so we were discussing your fine. We won't do a week's wages, but we're thinking you pay for the next
Hold on a minute.
day out.
The FA are right. The FA are right. Hold on a minute, yeah? I was late, yeah? Well, how many times have I been early here waiting for you lot?
Yeah, but you're late. You should be early every week, mate. We're on a time schedule.
But what we worked out, the FA were bang on.
short of this show.
What you don't know, the times have been moved the last 2 weeks, and I've had to, you know what I mean?
Who's moved them?
I don't know.
Right,
Someone's moved.
I know who's moved
It's been
them.
1:30. Usually it's 11.
It's 11. Joe's
I can
moved
deal
them.
with that.
Yeah, I know.
So,
I'm taking on too much.
He's
well,
busy.
so it kind of evens itself out here. Do you know what I mean? It kind of evens because I've got things to do on a Monday. You know what I mean?
Listen, because we love you, we'll give you a squeeze.
No, you can pay for the next day out.
Yeah.
Okay. I did. I basically did. I bought about 20 beers and no one drank them.
To be fair, they all ended up on someone's clothes. My mate left his jacket on the floor. He picked it up at the end of the night, and it was soaking wet. And it was freezing outside as well.
It was cold, wasn't it?
Yeah, he couldn't wear a jacket.
Oh,
brilliant.
Right, so
been up to much?
Do you know what? I was with Carlton on Tuesday night.
Oh,
Was that this Tuesday?
Yeah,
so we did. I've never done a. What was it called? Like public speaking Q&A with the West Ham fans.
That's what I do,
with
innit?
Tony Cotty.
You know me.
When you see this man,
Veteran.
this man in his element, he was just everyone. It was all West Ham fans. Tony Cotty ran it. It was a really nice, really good.
Chelsea fans in there, but they kept a low profile.
We was on stage and had a good chat, and it was just a good night, wasn't it? Good people.
It was a great night.
I like doing them events. I've done one a couple for Chelsea. I like doing them.
Yeah, it was nice. I was a bit worried because when I arrived and everyone had been on the booze, and then Tony Cotty got up and he said, "Right, we're going to sing the national anthem." I thought, what have I signed up? What, we're going to sing the national anthem now? And then he's put Bubbles come on the West Ham song, and he was singing that. I thought,
yeah, that is the national anthem, isn't it?
Yeah.
For West Ham fans.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always good. It's always good linking up with Tony Cotty.
Yeah.
I done one 2 days after with Tony Gale as well.
Did ya?
Yeah. With me, Dean Ashton, Trevor Brookin.
Really?
Tony Gale, yeah. So we do like, and it was on a boat, so we're going up and down the Thames. So they've never seen a buffalo on the Thames before. On a boat on the Thames, and so yeah, we had a great time on there. But yeah, it's caught up with me these last couple of weeks. Going out with you guys, obviously doing that, because you don't know how much you drink. You actually drink, like you're sipping all the beers and you're thinking, it builds up at the end of the week. Then my knee just blows out. Then I'm in a bad mood.
Hold on, just remember
I can imagine you in a bad mood.
I know.
We're halfway through the Q&A, half on the stage, and Cody's went, "I'm going to the toilet." Walked off stage.
Well, when you got to go, you got to go, innit? What do you want me to do? Embarrass myself up on the stage and warm myself?
True.
I'm not going to do that. I've got to go.
True.
When nature calls.
You got to go, mate. You got to go.
The buff can't just wee himself, man. You got to do it properly. Anyway.
It was good. What about yourself, Bridget?
Yeah, Bridge. Bridge Star.
Bridge Star. I ain't been up to much, really. Mrs. has been away, so I've been on my own with the kids, although Mum and Dad have helped me a bit. Bob Marley's birthday.
Bob Marley's
birthday last week.
I saw that.
So I cooked up a bit of... got a bit of inspiration for the night we went out, actually.
Yeah.
Got chatting to a few people, and they said... I said... We were talking about cooking. She obviously liked to cook. She had a cooking page, and her boyfriend was telling me how good she was.
Can I just stop you there quickly? Because like people are thinking, how boring are their nights out when you're talking like...
To be fair, it was at the end of the night. The night had finished. I don't know how we got onto it, to be honest. And she said, "What do you like to cook?" And then we were chatting.
Can't cook one.
And I was like, "I don't mind a bit of jerk chicken." She went, "Oh, have you ever had mango salsa?" I was like, "No." I was like, "I'm going to do that."
Right.
So I made little jerk chicken mango salsa.
What is going on in the Bridgie household, man?
Yeah, I know. Not a lot else, really, to be honest. Just been with
I'm just
kids.
expecting Ainsley to walk in. He texted me last night. Him.
I sent it to Joe as well.
Yeah, he's doing I think he was doing the cleaning or something. Yeah. But he was all dancing because in his kitchen he's got a big mirror in it. It looks onto the garden. It just looks so funny. This guy.
Yeah, basically, I was just doing house chores.
You're just a happy guy.
Dancing around. I had 2 hours waving the kids because someone took them bowling, one of their mates. I just thought, put some music on, clean the house.
Lovely.
Yeah,
and kids.
This is some Bob Marley.
Yeah. Joe Rasta.
Yeah,
celebrate Bob. We love Bob. We love Bob on the podcast.
Yeah, Bobby.
You gotta love him.
Listen, we need to get one of his relatives on here.
Yeah, we do.
Oh, mate. Just spreads the love, doesn't he?
Spreads the love. One love.
One love.
And then that's about it, really. Kids' footballs. I ain't been up to much.
Your knee?
My knee, yeah. So I had the results of my knee. It's, yeah.
It's bad.
It's bad.
Yeah, the wrong words are going to come out then. But yeah, no, it's bad. So, like, got no cartilage left on one side, so it's bone on bone.
Welcome to my world, Bridgie.
Yeah.
Been doing this for the last 10
Well, I
years.
had it on my left knee, so I had an osteotomy where they broke it and realigned it.
Oh,
so
did they?
Pretty much, yeah.
You're going to do the same again?
Well, I was going through my options today, so obviously they were just saying...
Is that why you... Is that why you walk like a chimp?
That's why I would have done.
No, right? You know what? I walk with a little bit of a wobble, but I've got one leg longer than the other.
If you look at us, me and Bridgie, when we're walking down the road, I'm walking like I've got an attitude.
I thought that was just a walk he had going on. Like.
No, it's not. It's actually my knee.
I do wobble a little bit, but that's because there's one leg longer than the other.
Mate,
yeah.
And my knees are bad. But yeah, my options... Like, he was talking about a knee replacement, but saying I was probably too young to have that because you'd have to have another one in, like, 10, 15 years. So it's just going down what injections I could have.
I thought the technology now, they'd have sorted that out by now.
Well, the injections they were talking about today, it sounded like they could inject it and then it would act like a sponge around the joint.
Yeah.
So I think that's a route I might end up trying, basically.
Yeah, don't go for
and you just got to see how it goes, no.
I want to come with you.
Yeah. Get 2 for 1, the pair.
We might get a deal.
Any good surgeons out there? No, but it's true. People think...
Actually, saying about Julian Dix.
Yeah?
He's just had his done. And
replacement?
He said, so I've been texting him on X.
Yeah.
And he says just go and get... But I don't know what he's done. I think he's had a proper knee replacement.
Yeah.
And like you, I think if I was to go... Because he's a bit older, obviously.
Yeah, too young at the moment.
He said I'm too young to get it done. So
people don't realise, do they? Like the ex-players, amount of you, like 44, Bridgie?
Yeah.
41.
And your knee replacements, you know what I mean? People don't realise there is a price to pay this to do.
Yeah, do you know what I'm not, can't run anymore. I think what annoys me more is in the garden with the kids having a kick about with them.
Can't do it.
Now it's like, if it ain't to my feet, I ain't getting it, mate. that side movement ain't happening. Yeah. So I'm just having to walk after it.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping the injections will help. And it just, that's the bit I miss.
Like Bridgie, you know there's a lot of fans out there who say, get on with it.
Oh, no, but
you got paid a shed load.
You know what I mean? If you said to someone, you know what, you can get paid this and you're going to have bad knees and you're older, everyone's going to take it.
Yeah, I'll take it.
It's just one of them things.
How come when we go snowboarding, I'm seeing you flying around, jumping, spinning?
Yeah, do you know what? I probably don't help myself with things like that, to be honest. But what I do notice is my recovery's quite quick. You know what it's like when you get off the slope, it's like, it's aching, it's really bad. But I can wake up in the morning and it don't feel too bad. But my training now is very much more static. There ain't much leg stuff. You know, it'd be bike I can get away with. The rower I kind of stay away from. The ski erg's not too bad. The assault bike. Boxing now, you know, it's just... That now with the movement and everything, it has to be
stationary.
Yeah, I can move, but you know,
stiff.
It's stiff. But the recovery's been quite good on it. But I've noticed over this last week, it's been more painful, and that's basically the arthritis.
That's me.
Yeah,
arthritis gang.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's not like it ain't like bad. I can still do it. Yeah. It's just a bit of pain. But he was like, "You need to be careful because it is."
I just want to
the
play
scans weren't very good.
I just want to.
I'm all right. But what have you been up to, Colin?
I'm bone on bone on my right knee.
Oof.
Yeah, and you know I'm tall as well.
Yeah.
So you can actually, with Bridgie's smaller. Yeah. With me, you can actually, when I'm walking, you can see my knee go like that.
You gotta drive a bus for it, can't you?
Mate. And basically, when I stand with my legs together, it's like the letter D. Capital D, mate. It's mad, and I'd love to go and play charity games, and I know I get a load of requests. Oh, can you come and play? But I can't do it.
Yeah, I just say no, you
can't do it, and I'll come and manage. And they were trying to get me on that one. I was like, that's even worse for me. I want to be out there playing. I just don't want to see them play.
Yeah, I'm not a watcher. I prefer playing.
Yeah. I prefer seeing my sons. I prefer seeing my sons play and try and direct them and coach. Or if I'm coaching and I know I'm getting something out of it. Then I don't want to be at a game where I'm thinking I should be playing it. I've done the management. Remember, I've done the management for, what was it, charity?
Oh, that was...
Kai and Prince charity.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, that was a good...
Foundation.
Kai and Prince Foundation, that was good.
I coached my youngest a little bit this weekend, actually.
Yeah.
I told him to do this and do that. He'd done the total opposite and it worked. I went... Do what you want, mate. And he just laughed at me.
But yeah, man. It's been
What else you been up to?
I haven't really been doing much. No, just a bit of football bits. Done a signing.
Yeah.
Last week, Josh Landers.
Yeah.
That was good. He's coming from Celtic, young lad. So we've done a load of new signings actually, like young boys getting their pros in the academy.
Really?
At West
That
Ham.
must be a nice moment for you, Coley, when the young lads get their pros for the first time.
Yeah, it is. We got the boy called Aaron Kamara, get his pro.
Yeah.
And he's buzzing.
Do you see the change in them, like when they get a few quid in their pocket, or is it like...
I don't get to see that part because I ain't going to go in their dressing room or anything like that. But then you've got some players that had to exit as well in this window.
Ooh,
that's the tough one.
When they're young.
Yeah, well, we had Kamara Sawyer, who we've retained. He's going to be with us at the end of the season. Then we've got Levi Lang, which I've got to say farewell to him. He's been a good young centre half, but just couldn't make the grade to get into our first team. But he was on the path. But sometimes injuries do set you back. You know what I mean?
Sometimes the path changes for some.
It ain't over though.
You've got to react as a youngster. You have to react. And then there's a few others that have been. I've got to say, Sean as well. Sean was really a good prospect, defender as well, but didn't really get the cut as well. And there's a load. It's so hard when you see youngsters that you've worked with and they have to move on, you know. So it is what it is.
Well, it's it. It's football.
But we've got a success story. We've got another boy called Favour that's gone to Stoke. I think he signed a 2-year deal over there, so good on him. So good luck on him. I think he made his debut the other day, so Favour, well done.
Yeah, good lad. Good lad. So, right, let's get on some football, because we've done, so far, cooking, operations, and all over the place. Plymouth Argyle, see, I've on my notes here, it's a monumental upset, agree. Championship strugglers, bottom place, Plymouth eliminated Premier League leaders from the FA Cup.
Sure.
Right, but you said in the green room, Bridgie, they're still in the championship, so it's not massive.
Yeah,
is
it's
it?
not massive. It just happens in the cup, doesn't it? There's a change of personnel, starting lineup, and sometimes it comes down to mentality. Sometimes, isn't it? That I watched some of it.
Right,
the Plymouth players were well up for it, mate.
Well really,
like proper up for it. And I love it. Right, it's great. It's the FA Cup. You beat Liverpool. It's brilliant. But you know, if I'm the manager, I'm like, you should be doing that every week.
Yeah.
Like that, the effort. I don't get me wrong, I haven't seen them every week, so they might have been doing it, but I see it and I think,
well, they ain't if they're bottom of the championship.
Passion. They're making a tackle and they're celebrating with tackles and stuff like that, and you think to yourself, that should be every week.
Yeah, but look, what it is, Bridgie, you say that, but there's been a new manager, so obviously it was Wayne Rooney before. I don't know what's happened there. New managers come in. Did you see the new managers? Team talk.
I saw it. Yeah,
inspirational.
Yeah.
So it looks like now they're on the upturn and they've started to play some good football. And they've actually
fresh people, fresh.
Yeah, but this manager just looks the part, though, Bridgie.
Yeah.
Like I'm looking at him, I'm thinking, what an inspiration for those boys. And obviously they're going to go and try and outperform Liverpool. Who does that? Like, you know what I mean? And
it's incredible.
But one thing about these type of games, it's always open to the elements. Like you're going to Plymouth Argyle.
Yeah,
crowd's up for it.
It's a long way.
That's what's great about cup games.
It's a long way as well, Bridgie. I've been down there.
Made some great saves, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
Made some great saves.
Like
one right at the end as well.
Yeah. So that's what when you look at it as well, to top that off, you've got a manager that's saying they don't outmatch you with your effort. Because, you know, when you're the big team, you're the big scout, you go to these, you have to match them with effort first. Then your quality might have to come through.
It's the easiest thing to get.
Yeah.
Really.
Effort.
It's the easiest thing.
Well, for you it is. Some people...
No, but it should be for everyone.
No, you're right.
It should be the best at the easiest thing.
It's not.
It's a mental thing as well, like thinking, I'm not sure if I'm up for this guy. This guy's going to come steaming in and he's got up for it. And I'm just like, I don't know whether I'm going to be in that space of mind.
Yeah.
It's easily done, Bridgie. You know, like if you got a team that's like when we used to play Manchester United or West Ham and Chelsea or Arsenal. I don't know what happened. There was a 10% say that we need to go. There's an extra 10% there that we need to go and sort this out and make sure and put it in their faces. And it kind of the bigger teams. Obviously, you guys have been on the bigger teams and knowing that, it's going to be a hard game. Every game's a hard game. Every game. It's that winning mentality that you have to have. And I don't think Liverpool saw Plymouth Argyle as that
buzzing from though. Buzzing from. But I think they bounced back quick, Liverpool.
Of course.
I don't think, do you know what I mean?
They got the derby, didn't they?
It wasn't their first team.
Yeah. They got the derby.
Right.
They got the derby coming on Wednesday night, I think, which is like... I don't know whether... Go on. No, I don't know whether... It's away. It's at Goodison Park. It's the last ever derby at Goodison Park. Now, you know, having lived up there and played for Liverpool, Everton, they'll just think, we ain't losing the last time. We want to win the last derby here. Yeah. Now, just a quick question to both of you. If Everton beat Liverpool, does that bring Arsenal back into it?
They need to lose more than one game, mate.
Yeah, but, like, this is the first... Like, Arne Slot's been strolling around the Premier League. Like, I reckon he's on the phone to his mates going... What's all this Premier League about, mate?
This is my last year, man.
Coming in, running the show.
I do.
The way he's walking around Anfield.
Like notorious, like McGregor. His arms just like that.
It's going to be a tough game. It's going to be a tougher game than what it would have been a month ago, I'll tell you that much, because they've been doing a lot better. So it'll be a tough game.
Yeah, it will be a tough game.
I can't see it. Even if they lost, I don't think it'll put them off their stride. I think they'll bounce back quick.
I think it'll have some kind of effect, man.
Yeah.
It'll have a little bit of effect, but it's a tough game. Do you know what I mean? It's the derby. Everton, like you said, they're going to be well up for it.
Everton are going to be up for it.
Yeah, now, if I'm on a slot, right, and someone offered me a point in the derby now, would I take it? I think I would, you know. Yeah. That's mad. Even though you got the better team on the pitch, I just think, like... It's just the psychological thing of what could... If you lose it in a way that... Say they get battered, or, I'm not saying they will, but it could get worse, you know what I mean? Whereas you take a point, it sort of quells that little thing and you move on to the next game.
You just mentioned psychological battle, yeah? So psychologically, they've just lost to Plymouth.
Right.
That's already...
Yeah.
So minus.
On the bounce.
So to lose another psychological battle, that's another minus. What happens after that if they lost 2 on the bounce? Like, psychologically, are they really up for going to go and get this league? And does it let Arsenal think, hold on a minute, smell a little bit of blood, let's go again? Yeah. Depending on Arsenal and how they react as well.
That's true. We're gonna stick
down to the mentality of players after a loss, isn't it?
That is your key word for today. mentality.
I'll tell you who needs some mentality, Spurs.
Seamless.
Mate, Spurs, what are you saying?
What am I saying? Well, mate, it's just like, you know what it's like on the group chats when your mates, like my Spurs mates coming through, like, and it's gone beyond the banter now, you're like worried for their mental health.
Yeah.
I'm like
they're proper upset, aren't they?
You all right, Geese? Is everything all right? Like, it's like, and then you get back,
I'm not all right. No, I'm not.
All right. I was listening on the radio, it's like, Levy out, they're shouting for Levy out.
They were poor.
And you just look at, do you know what I looked at, right? When they conceded the goal and they went back and Angie's face, Ange just looked like, he looked lost. But the bench behind him, I look at the bench behind him and it was a young kid. And he's going to look round and go, he's already got Mikey Moore playing, who I think is a terrific player. You think, like, isn't
Archie?
Archie Gray. But I'm like, there don't seem to be no fight. Do you know what I mean?
There's a lot of space for Villa players. Yeah. And the fight, it was like, I remember someone picked it up, one of the Villa players, in loads of space. But then 4 players from Tottenham got close to him, but not one of them stuck a leg out or tried to make a challenge. There's no urgency in anything, no real
I was
pressing together.
It weren't.
I listened to Ange Postecoglou's interview afterwards as well.
Mate,
I felt sorry for him, man.
His head was down, wasn't it?
His head was
he
down.
Looked beaten.
There's such a shadow of the man that come rolling in.
Mate,
and then he was a breath of fresh air when
Crocodile
he first came
Dundee rolling in the place.
Mate,
I think
I text you, I said he needs a day out. He needs to come out on our day out. I think we need to cheer him up a little bit.
He does need to come out.
At the very least, they get good jerk chicken recipes.
But the thing is, right, I listened to it, and he's quite right. When I listened to what he was saying that these bunch of players have been playing a lot for 2 months straight with no one changing, and they're playing on a Thursday, then they're playing on a Sunday, Thursday, Sunday, and it's so hard.
Whose fault's that though?
That's upstairs. Because he's got
a lot of injuries, right?
He's got a lot of injuries. So medical team.
Before you go, right? First, they went to Australia at the back end of last season for a few quid when the players could be resting, and now they're worried about their players being tired now. Yeah. Maybe, how about not sending them to Australia?
Yeah.
And
getting them right for the season.
Tired and injured. So, like, the players that are remaining, like, they're only tired because there's so many injuries and there's not enough young players that have the quality, obviously, at this present moment to step in. So you can't really blame... And I love how Ange attacked it as well. It's like, he protects his players. He's like, I'm asking too much of these boys. Like, week in, week out, I've got to put out the same team. What other team in this position, in my position, will be able to do the same thing and get results? It's going to be very hard. And I looked at it and I thought, you know what? He's got a point there.
Yeah.
He has a point. And he says, whether you want to slander me or say I'm not good enough, you can say that. It's all there. But don't batter the players. Like, the players, they've given their all, and it's just they're tired. They can't do this week in, week out with no help.
Yeah, but that, like...
I know it does seem like a cop-out. It does, but...
Fucking sacking him's harsh.
I think the mistake he made is not changing his system, like, and being married to the way he plays football. You know, absolutely in football, you know, these players are good enough. If you know you're going to be without 2 centre-halves for 3 months...
You've got to change the
way you play. Yeah. Like, it's just stupid. It's like going out and fighting Mike Tyson and going, I'm going at you. I've got no defence. I'm just going to, and you're having a shootout with him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you can't do it. You got to adjust. Like, they're good enough to adjust. We all believe in philosophy of play and what we believe in, but you have to change. So they've got that. He's got that wrong. Ange Postecoglou. Everything else, I don't think is his problem. I think the rest of the problems. Daniel Levy and Spurs' business model.
Yeah, of course.
But that's the only thing he's got wrong, Ange Postecoglou. And I think when he leaves Tottenham, I think he'll look back and go, yeah, I would have done that differently.
Yeah, maybe. But they've just got that Matthias Tell.
Yeah.
He's come in, he's scored straight away.
Took his goal well.
So that's a good sign that he's on the score sheet straight away. I didn't see the game, like, I didn't watch it as well as I should have. You probably guys...
Yeah.
How did Rashford do?
Rashford looked very good.
Yeah.
Very good. He looked like... I was a bit worried about him, right? When he signed, like, no little things like he hadn't had a haircut. No, when he'd gone... No, like when he's gone to Villa and his hair was all over the place. Yeah. I think you said it, Cole. It might have been you saying it, like... But I thought... And he looked a bit caught in the headlights in his interviews. I don't think he's a great talker anyway. But he had his hair cut. I know it sounds silly.
It makes a difference.
He looked good. His body language was better. He was direct. Yeah. I think he looked like he's not been training at the level he should have done, because a couple of times he breezed past someone, they got back at him. But overall, he was good. Very, very good.
Motivated.
Asensio, who come on with him, stole the show for me. I think he looked like...
Oh, really?
He was the man. He was the man, but...
It's a fresh start for him, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just fresh.
Yeah.
I was talking about if managers come in, it's fresh for all the players.
Yeah. Just someone said, sorry to Bridget, someone said that you would have had this when you went to Chelsea. He hadn't worn another team's shirt since he was a kid. He'd already been at Man United since the age of 7, so...
Yeah.
But do you remember the first time you wore another shirt apart from Southampton? Was that a big thing for you?
A bit at Chelsea.
I find it quite weird. It's a weird feeling, isn't it?
Also, as well, I think I'm one of them... I'm not sure if I really wanted to leave.
Yeah.
Because, you know, Southampton boy, I've played through all my life. I'm not really someone who really loves change.
Yeah.
Obviously, me moving was just... Saints just wanted me gone anyway for the money. But, yeah, it feels weird.
Yeah.
And it's a new environment, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's new people. It's getting used to it. You get used to it quite quick. But, yeah, it is weird.
Yeah,
it's definitely weird.
So that for Marcus Rashford, it'd be even more, because he's 27. He weren't 21.
It's late.
Yeah.
Not even been on loan.
Not even on loan. Yeah, don't know your new teammates. It's a strange feeling.
It is a strange feeling.
I just think he could do really well. He's a great player. He's got so much ability. It's a fresh start. Maybe if his head wasn't in a great place, going to be in a better place. I think the manager obviously wants to get the best out of him. I hope he does really well. I think
Man United had it in their head that he's going to be a one-club man, innit? And it hasn't worked out that way. So the readjustment's scary for Rashford, and I get that. So hopefully he can go and produce what he needs to produce. And on top of that, did you see Sancho's tweet?
Oh, freedom.
Jadon Sancho's tweet to Rashford. It was under Rashford's comment section.
He just wrote freedom.
Freedom. I was like, hold on a minute. It's like this guy just like, what are you doing? What do you mean freedom?
Old Trafford's like Wormwood Scrubs at the moment. Like, do you know what I mean? You need a VO.
It's a prisoner.
Yeah.
Mate, when players are saying that, you're like, wow.
What's going on over there?
Yeah.
But is it the right person to come from? I'm not sure.
He definitely got some stick
I'm sure. I'm so happy that the social media weren't around when we was playing, because I just think a man of trouble I've got. We've all talked last week about Coventry.
Let's talk about that right now. So I get I'm on the train coming here. We're talking about social media. And at West Ham, we've got a guy called Dan Francis. And I know Dan. You know Dan.
I know Dan.
He's head of all our commercials.
Yeah. Love Dan.
Media stuff.
Big shout.
Big shout to Dan Francis. Thanks and he looks after the lads immensely and proper make sure that we're sound and we don't get into too much trouble. But obviously I've had him as a player, and then now obviously I'm backroom staff now, as they call you. And then I got a text. He's gone. It was about one thing first. So can I do this? Represent the club capacity. I was like, yep, I'll do that. And the second one was, and he showed me the tweet that from 2012 that I tweeted to a particular fan, and he said something bad to me, and I've gone straight for your mum jokes. Straight for the judge. You know when you say the mum jokes come out, like I was like, just because I'd already been fined.
These kids don't know about the mum jokes back in the day.
I'd already been fined 220 grand. Yeah, I thought I'm gonna have a little go here, but I'm gonna do it respectfully. I'm gonna do the mum joke. This is 2012. But actually, I done auntie, mum, and grandma.
Can we say it on here?
No, we can't. If you want to see, I've had. He goes, Holy, just had a text from someone confidentially at the FA. It's not confidential no more, is it? Yeah, at the Premier League. Sorry, not the FA, the Premier League. And I was like, what is it? Then he showed me the text, and
he ain't going back that far,
mate. And then I've gone, hold on a minute, yeah. Why are they watching me? Why are they looking at what I done in 2012? I don't even play it anymore. Like, do you know what I mean? But then I looked at it and I thought, well, I work around kids. Is this the sort of language I want to portray towards them? And I was like, do you know what? Yeah. So it's like 13 years ago, yeah?
Yeah.
And then they're contacting the club. I think Carlton needs to be able to delete this, the history of... I was like, okay, cool, I get it. But then I started to think, yeah? I was like, as I was deleting, I was like, do you know what? They got bigger fish to fry. They've got other stuff to worry about. How about they're worried about the standard of refereeing?
Yeah, exactly.
Why are they worried about my tweet in 2012?
Bang on.
Well, that is just too much policing. Police your referees.
Police yourself. Police yourself.
You know what I mean? Like, what's going on here?
The nonsense that, you've got fire in my belly now. The nonsense that is, right?
Fire in my belly.
Oh, it's nonsense.
Fire in the booth.
What are you worried about me for? The Premier League saying, you need to check Carlton's tweet in 2012. What the hell?
No, it sums them up, right? Some nerd is sitting there going, Carlton said something 15 years ago. 15 years ago? There's a lot. Things are going on in the world now.
You don't need to bring it up, do you? You got forget. Why are you bringing it up to you?
That's exactly why I didn't go on it all them years ago. They made me go on social media because they wanted to work. Otherwise, I wouldn't have a job in TV.
Yeah.
Like, the things you say, that would have been just something that you said. Your mum joke, which I think's brilliant anyway. 13 years ago, and they're coming back to you now. Mate, you're a different person.
And on top of that, Coley, I'll tell you what, on top of that, I was looking at it the other day, same thing, like...
I wouldn't delete it.
Mate,
No, you got to.
Retweet it.
Yeah, I had to delete it.
Yeah.
I had to delete it.
That's made me angry, that.
But the thing about it as well, I'm thinking, all right, fair enough, you're doing all that. Yeah. Then the celebrations. You know they're trying to censor Premier League celebrations.
Oh, God, the fun police.
The seagull one, the boy got fined and all that. What? Celebrate.
Oh, God.
You can't take away celebrations. We've got VAR already giving us
to be fair, there's no point in celebrating. You celebrate now, VAR comes in, I'll take that celebration away.
Yeah, do you know what I mean?
But they actually want to stop you celebrating.
They want to stop you celebrating. They're just coming to pee on our parade, them.
I want to know. No. What we want to know, please, if you're listening to this, someone on the FM, write to us or email us or text us.
Anything you want to do.
And just explain why you want to delete Celebrate. For what?
Because they're saying it's, provocative,
That's what football's all
and
about.
they're saying it's if it's disrespectful to the other fans.
Oh God!
So if you do it, listen. If I scored against Brighton and I do this like
the seagull, someone's going to be so offended. Cole's dancing like a seagull.
I want to know what there must be something else to it, or something that person can't be offended.
No, you can't. Talking about mum jokes, they're always like killer, aren't they? Right?
Killer.
Because I still play.
It's the line in the sand, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the line in the sand. Right? Well, I still play Sunday League football. You reminded me of something I'd done last year, right? So we're playing against youngsters. They're like in their early 20s, some teenagers, right? And you always get one, you know, chirping. Oh, you used to play in the Premier League. Oh, you're rubbish, and all that. All right, mate, well done. Yeah, yeah, you're old man. Yeah, and all that, right? But this geezer was chirpy, and I was like,
kept on going.
Like looking at him, going, I need to shut him up now. Right? So I'm chatting to the centre half, their centre half, and I've gone. They're from like the area where I was from. I said, and I pretended I knew. I got his name was on the back of his shirt, and so I said, what's his? I heard him calling this. I knew his first name, and I knew his surname.
Yeah.
And I was like, what's he? I think I know his dad, innit? What's his name? Max. Blah.
Yeah.
And they went, and the centre half's gone, his dad's name. So I went, what's his mum's name as well? I think I know him. And she give me the mum's name and the surname, right? So I've gone to him like, he's chirped up again.
Well, hold on, what's happening there? What kind of football game is this? You're a copper on the pitch, you know?
So I've got his mum's name, and I'm thinking, I'm doing the maths. I'm thinking, how old is he? He's like 19. So his mum and dad must be sort of my age. And I know everyone in that area goes to this certain nightclub, right? Yeah. So I just leant into him, like when he's chirping up, I went, I said, I know your mum. What's her name? What was her name? I can't remember her name.
Don't expose her name. Don't do it.
I don't know his mum. But for this, and his mates, and he can see his face. How do you know my mum?
Yeah.
And she went, and I said, she went to the nightclub. Mate, she loved it. Right.
She loved it back then. She loved it back then.
No, but honestly, this geezer's so annoying.
The reason why you can't imagine, because he's such a lovely fella. But this guy must have been. Yeah, he got the better of you, man. He got you.
He was like a little face went like, and his mates like that. And I was going, yeah, she loved it. Partying with the lads, they loved it. They battered him. They were crazy.
Oh, brilliant.
So mum jokes are aligning us. We've gone a bit off tangent there.
Yeah, but it is what it is, because it's part of like what's going on. Like, with it all ties in anyway with social media and all that. But look, obviously we're talking about Rashford. So Manchester United v Leicester City. That was I watched that.
What did you make of it?
Robbery.
Yeah.
Absolute robbery.
What's the boys doing?
Yeah.
I just don't understand. I know. Look, to be honest, Manchester United would have probably got the better of them after extra time anyway. But Leicester had already put in so much work, and they haven't had a great season, Leicester.
Yeah.
And to actually come away after full time with something like that would be like very galvanising for them. They'll be looking at it thinking, do you know what? We can build on this. I felt sorry for Rude.
Yeah.
But after the interview afterwards, he took it very well. And I was thinking, imagine, that you've worked so hard to get to that point, and then you get outdone by a goal that's disallowed. Talking about referees, by the way. Like, that should be disallowed, sorry. I'm looking at it thinking, you got to look at that and think, you're one-time referees when you've got no VAR and you can show that you're competent and skillful enough to see there's 5 players offside and you don't call it and you're in line. I just don't understand what is going on. Like, and this is nothing to do with Manchester United. Manchester United fans, actually, when I was on air that night for TalkSport, and they were calling in and thinking, and they were saying the same thing.
Really?
So it wasn't good enough. How are we winning a game at home to Leicester City, who are struggling, and having to win by a goal that's dodgy? Like, honestly, man, like, come on.
Yeah.
That's keep coming back to all the time. It's Manchester United at the moment.
Yeah.
We keep thinking they might have turned the corner, but they ain't, have they?
Mate,
it's getting boring, isn't it?
It's getting boring. That's one thing you could never, ever say about Man United, that you wouldn't want to watch them play. I don't want. If they're on telly, I'm like, usually like you go, Man United, let's see what's going on. I'm like, nah, got a yogurt in the fridge or something.
I'm guaranteeing
boring to watch.
I'm guaranteeing that Rashford goes and has a good season there, right? The rest of the season. I'm guaranteeing that Anthony,
No, don't.
Mate, he's gone over there. He's got man of the match already, yeah, and he scored his first goal in 2 games. Yeah. He's flying.
Wow. Anthony.
Is there something in the Manchester United water that I don't know about? Because something's happening.
It's like though, if you're at a club and it ain't going well and you want out, it's when it clears your head, you're having a little bit of a fresh start, and you got.
What's going on?
The manager like encouraging you, putting an arm around you, giving you the confidence, just go out and play.
Yeah,
but I think Rashford's going to do well.
I want him to do well
because he's a great player,
and I want Anthony to do well. Like, I don't know Anthony.
We want them all to do well.
We want them all to do well.
I love so much ability, Rashford. I hope
that's another thing as well. Like genuinely, I think there's 2 types of pundits in there. Like, there's people that there's your. The positive, I want to see everyone do well, and then you see the other types of pundits who just want to can't wait for it. Like, it's so bad, was that on it? You're like, leave off, mate. Anyway, moving quickly on, Manchester City avoided a major FA Cup upset by coming from behind to defeat Leyton Orient in the 4th round tie. Now, my father-in-law, massive Leyton Orient fan, so he took my son Harry, my eldest, and he's Harry. This is a kid that's. I pay a fortune for Chelsea season tickets. He come home from this game and said, Dad, I prefer Leyton Orient. And I'm just like, mate.
Seriously?
Mate, I'm just like...
I prefer Leyton Orient.
I think that's the atmosphere.
He loves it.
That's the atmosphere.
Yeah.
It is now with these big stadiums. I think the atmosphere ain't there anymore. It's ain't what it used to be.
He come home. He goes to. He loves football. We go. It's a great thing I can do in this job. I can take him to all different games. He come home absolutely flying. He loved it. He said it's a great game. I watched it on telly with my other son.
Send him to the next Leyton Orient game. See if he's still.
What, Mansfield at home? They're playing tomorrow.
He won't be thinking.
No, he loves it, Bridge. He loves it. He loves it. There's more swearing at Leyton Orient.
That was like when I went to Brighton. When I went to Brighton, and obviously it was. Championship. There's still like nice stadiums, but my mates that used to come, they preferred it because the atmosphere is better. The fans are giving it.
You know what it is? It's unsanitized behaviour. It's unsanitized behaviour, and I'm sure that people smuggling in beers because they ain't got enough security over there. So they're having a great time. Do you know what I mean?
I think that's what's great about the cup games, though. The FA Cup, innit?
Get to mix
the Leicester teams and mix, and they're never easy games, are they?
No.
That's the beauty of it. Like anyone can win it.
That's true. They're never easy game. One of the things about... Anyway, that Manchester City tie, they had to bring on Kevin De Bruyne and Foden to get the job done, didn't they?
Yeah.
But quickly, I just want to get your opinion on, the VAR. FA Cup decisions have proved... Like, it's been handled lightly in the FA Cup. So... And I just think it's made for more of a rhythm to the game. And it was not used across the 4th round fixtures, leading to controversial decisions. So the VAR data, which the Premier League has revealed, has appeared to show that accuracy is improving. Oh, shock that they're saying that with their data, they're getting better. The thing that they work with,
they've done it in the
I'm
house.
just like, you've got a camp, you've got it there in front of you.
Yeah.
You can still get it wrong. You're watching a video back and you're still getting it wrong. Just go back to the referee and the linesman doing the game. Like we were talking about earlier.
No, but
the Man United, it's offside. We can all see it, right? Is it linesmen just being lazy now because they got the VAR?
Maybe, that's what I'm trying to think.
It looks like they're lazy.
Maybe
they don't have to worry about it no more. Because they're putting it on someone. Why'd you bother having the linesman?
Maybe he
Because you're going on VAR anyway.
Yeah, true.
Just go on VAR then.
Maybe he thought it was going to get called back for VAR. And it just like, no, it didn't. It's like, he probably forgot where he was.
I just think you just go back. There's going to be mistakes. They're going to get it wrong. And hopefully it balances itself out.
That's what I was saying, Bridgie.
I just think I prefer.
That's what I was trying to say.
And the goal, someone scores, you're celebrating, but there's no point in celebrating. Just wait and see if VAR gives it or not, and then jump up and down. I don't like it.
One chance they had, to display that they were competent. That's what I'm going back to this, because I don't mind. 1 in 10 games, you're gonna get a boo-boo. Something's gonna happen. Sometimes the referee's gonna get it wrong. Yeah. The one time, it's on TV. Manchester United, one of the biggest teams in the league, against Leicester City.
Yeah.
the one time it's not used, and you could advertise for your colleagues and how good the Premier League refereeing is, that we could do this without VAR.
Yeah.
You get it, a massive decision, 5 players offside. You didn't even you didn't even think maybe they're offside. You're killing yourselves at one time. But out of, like, say 10 games and there's no VAR, I get it. I don't mind one boo-boo. But just this one game, for you to advertise and say, scrap VAR, you messed it up. That's what I think we need it.
It takes the part of the game of getting away with things as well. Do you know what I mean? When you can, like, do something a little bit discreetly and get away with it, you're buzzing, ain't you? Referee ain't seen it. But now VAR comes out, it's like you can't get away with it.
Half of my goals would have been chalked off.
That's
half of my goals would have been chalked off.
You know what I mean? It's part and parcel of the game, doing a little something, getting away with it, innit?
I know.
I think it's ruined it, and it's the stop-starting of it. I don't like it.
I'm with you. I agree with you. But these are the same people that want this stuff, are the same people that are trying to ban celebrations and pull him on 30-year-old.
You know what? I won't go to tackle.
30-year-old tweets. Oh, mate. Imagine all these young lads, right, who are playing in the Premier League now, right? Sorry, that's my phone. That's another phone.
Your phone?
Yeah.
Oh, my God. Man. You're late. Your phone
going
off.
Sorry.
We've got the next night out. You play for the one after.
We've got to be better than this.
We have to stand. We're pulling up standards of the referees. Right, we'll be better next week, people. Where was I? I was waffling on about something. VAR. Yeah, anyway, VAR, rubbish. Celebrations, we love them.
It's just nonsense.
Yeah.
I get a sanitised celebration.
No, this was what I wanted to mention. Going back to what you said about all these young lads who've grown up with social media, they must have said, imagine the stuff that you said to your mates as a 13-year-old or 14-year-old, and that if you recorded that and put it online, which I'm sure some of these players would have done, and there's a history
There'll be prison.
Sentences.
Deep sentences as well.
Right, so just have an amnesty what people say. That's what they thought when they were a child, and they might think something differently.
They even make mistakes. You don't have to keep bringing it up either, do you?
Exactly. Let's celebrate goals. Yeah. I'd love to see Carlton scoring against Brighton and doing a seagull dance. I would get upset at that.
I don't understand it, but that's what's messing the game up. People that are trying to draw the fun out of the game, just take a back seat. We don't need to get involved with everything.
Yeah.
You don't need to be there for everything. Let it be natural. You can't police how someone's going to feel or speak sometimes. It's going to happen. You just got to educate, say, OK, don't do that. But you can't punish people for celebrating and doing all that sort of stuff.
That's true. Let it be.
Let it be.
We're going to have to a little more of a serious turn here. Manchester City's 115 charges outcome in a month, as the quote from Guardiola. Expected soon, Pep Guardiola confirmed that Manchester City expects a decision on 150 financial rule breach charges within a month. Potential consequences, if found guilty, City could face severe punishments, including a points deduction or even relegation. Guardiola's stance, who's already signed a contract, he's claimed that the critics want Man City wiped from the face of the earth. That's a bit strong.
He's got to say that, though, isn't he?
You know,
they'd love to see him go down and get points deducted, though, wouldn't they?
You want to see him go to prison. That's what they want to see. That's what they get rid. He's won a lot, innit?
Back to all these charges.
Don't worry, Geese, your readies are all right.
Good,
Imagine that.
Oh, no.
What, they've got to come back to you to give you your readies back.
I ain't got it. It's gone.
I spent it. God. But yeah.
What transfer?
Imagine that.
That quick.
Nice clothes in the thing.
Imagine that. No, that would be bad.
You're saying about that. Someone had me on the wind up when the Roman
sold the club.
Sold the club, got the club taken. Yeah. Right, anyway, someone had me on the phone, got me right at it, telling me that they're going to be looking back at all Chelsea players, the finances.
The Chelsea players, how they got paid and that.
I was on the phone to the bank. I was like, mate...
You definitely called it at your age, didn't you?
Yeah. What processes were in place? Flights were booked. Cayman Islands.
I'm out of here.
I'm gone, mate. You ain't ever going to get me.
That's hilarious.
Tell you what, if those charges end up, if they're guilty of it all and they get the proper punishment,
Guilty of what?
Crazy. What happens to all them players? Guilty of what?
Like,
yeah.
Because that's what... It's actually quite an interesting subject to talk about because, you know, guilty of financial irregularity, basically saying that they're spending more than they're bringing in.
Yeah.
But it's also like a question of freedom as well, financial freedom. Like, if you found an oil well in the back of your garden, right, tomorrow, and you made yourself £2 billion, right, you go... Yeah,
you regulated though.
Be like, no, but like, you want to go and buy Southampton, and take them to the top. You want to spend $500 million doing it. You won't be able to do it, like, you know, because of
you have to have the infrastructure to
support it. But I just think, I don't know. It's a tough one. I don't know where.
But I think they're doing so much good for Manchester, the city itself.
Economy, money, economy.
Changed so much. For the first time I've been up there for years, I couldn't believe how much it's changed.
It's because they've put in a load of money in.
It's a great city.
Yeah.
They've put a load of money in, Bridgie. Like,
a lot of money.
They're not looking at that part. They're just looking at the part where... And they're trying to penalise it for that.
They put all that money in, right? But then the government want to help Man United out.
Yeah, that's a banger. Yeah, that was last week. That was on the government want to subsidise Manchester United's, with the taxpayers' money, subsidise their stadium build, which is just, for me, just blows my mind when there's people in the streets struggling. And what we're going to put a new ice bath in for at Manchester United or something? I don't know. Like, what's going on with the world? But then you've got... so, like, I don't know. I mean, it's way above my pay grade. I just know that... if they get found guilty, which I think they will...
They say it could face severe punishment. So is it likely that punishment's not going to be as severe as what's being written about, maybe?
Points deduction or even relegation. Well, it's happened before in other countries. Remember, it happened in Juventus. It happened to Glasgow Rangers. So there is precedent to do it, but it's never happened to a Premier League club of the size of Manchester City.
I'll tell you what, I don't think they don't look like they care. I think they're quite confident. They're still going to spend. They got record winter spending. Yeah, they're still going out to Harrods.
That's still spending.
They're still going Selfridges, mate. So what problems? They ain't got none. All right. So amid uncertainty, City spent 180 million in the January transfer window, acquiring 4 new players.
Yeah, I think
obviously
Kushner. Seeing it, I can't.
Kushner, 33.6 million they spent.
They're basically...
I think they're pretty confident they get away with it when you look at it like that. Isn't it?
Marmouche, 63 million.
Mate.
And Gonzalez for 50. So they don't care. I just think they're cracking on.
They're cracking
these lot are making a lot of noise.
Or they just know.
Yeah.
We're all right. Let's carry on spending.
They're just making a lot of noise there, and it's paper talk. Yeah. It's not real.
No, but yes. So I don't even know where we stand on that, but... It's going to be interesting what happens over the next few months. That is absolutely for sure.
But they were saying he was spending because of maybe a potential transfer ban as well, weren't they?
Yeah. What happened to Chelsea, didn't it? We've seen Chelsea with a transfer ban.
It actually helped them for a bit, didn't it?
Well, listen,
Lamps was brilliant on those conditions.
Yeah, because you have to bring in young players. I mean, and that was another thing as well. We talk about the finances in the Premier League. I was talking to someone in that game, and they said... what we export around the world, Great Britain, in terms of revenue, the Premier League is actually our biggest export. Like, every country buys it. You think about the tourism it brings into the club, and then you have to go and talk about
tourism to the country.
To the club, to the country. So people come to England now. They go, right, we're going to go and see Big Ben, we're going to see Buckingham Palace, and we're going to catch a Premier League game. Yeah. That's it.
Doesn't matter who it is. It's a Premier League game.
Yeah, they go there, and so. You got that, plus all of the TV rights around the world, the advertising revenue. Why do you think all these big American hedge funds want in? Because they know it all flows through football.
Yeah.
So I understand you have to have like a way of controlling that because it's powerful, but you can't have like we're going to sanction Man City for this, but from the government, and then we're going to help Man United with their rebuild of their stadium when they're owned by billionaires. I don't think that makes sense either. So, but
well, as you said, I just think their spending does coincide with probably getting a ban. Because if they're just preparing, say, okay, we're not going to be able to buy players for the next year or two, then we've got to do something now. So let's just spend now, just get it out of the way, and then stockpile on our assets.
Right things doing it.
And you know what I mean? So it's the right thing to do if you think you're going to be going down that route.
They're basically doing what everyone done during COVID.
Just go and buy toilet rolls. Go and stack up on toilet rolls. Yeah. There's no toilet rolls in the shops anymore. It's like, what's going on? Toilet rolls. Can of baked beans, all of them gone. You know, but...
Talking transfers, Mikel Arteta to offload 7 Arsenal players to fund a huge summer spending spree is a bit of the paper talk. Basically to offload some players to strengthen the squad, and particularly the attacking department.
Interesting. Let's look at these names now. Raheem Sterling, let's go through them one by one. It hasn't worked for Raheem, has it? It doesn't look like it. What do you think, Bridgie?
He's been a bit unlucky, I think.
Have you seen much of him?
I've seen bits, and there's glimpses and thought he looks good.
Still got it.
Yeah. He's still got it.
Yeah, of course. He's a young man.
Does he suit that team system and what's been asked of him?
I've almost... I
remember he was the main man for quite a while at City. Like, things were going for
really
him.
well, didn't he?
But I think he's been playing off the right for Arsenal. But I always remember him playing off the left and causing a load of damage.
Yeah.
So it is a different style.
Yeah.
He played totally different to what City played as well.
Exactly. So it's adapting's really hard for him.
You know what? I was at Liverpool when he come through. The 2 young lads from London. I don't know if I told the story on the pod. Have I said this? No. Him and Jordan Ibe. Do you remember Jordan Ibe?
Yeah, Jordan Ibe.
They both come up from London, and
he scored the other day.
Did he?
For his club, I think. He plays in the lower leagues now, but he's had to get back on his feet.
Yeah, he's had
some issues. Mental health issues.
Yeah. So we wish him all the best. But so I was a senior player. I was coming back from Lille actually, so I must have been 31, 32, and they come on tour with us, and the player liaison officer pulled me and said, "We've got these 2 lads from London." A little bit maybe a bit nervous, make sure they're all right. So I remember going to see him, and I was like, "You're right, lads." I was out in Boston or somewhere, and what he struck me, Raheem, was he was very mature. He was 16, 17-year-old.
He is
very mature as a kid, and then he joined in training, and you could just see the qualities. Do you know what I mean? But more importantly than that, he listened. Like, he was hanging off everything Brendan said. So he's had a great career. I don't think Arsenal's the right move for it. My advice to Raheem now would be go and enjoy your football somewhere. Go abroad. Do you know what I mean? He's had a Chelsea move that ain't quite worked for him. Saudi. He's still capable. Enjoy your football.
Yeah. Still got a lot to offer.
That's growing.
Yeah.
Go and do that.
He's got plenty of football left in him, I think.
Yeah, I do as well. He's a baby.
He's a baby, yeah. I see him out and I see him at Winter Wonderland.
You said.
Yeah, I see him in Winter Wonderland. Yeah. What a guy.
People are going to be thinking you're at Winter Wonderland all the time.
I think everyone thought he was my kid as well. We took a picture and because he's like, my kids are taller than him. so it's okay. I posted it on my Instagram, you'll see it. But he's such a great guy, and he doesn't turn down any photo ops or anything like that. So he's a brilliant guy, man. For me, and there's certain other things that he's done where I respect him fully. Yeah. Not just being a footballer, but as a person.
He's been a role model.
He's been a great role model.
Yeah, I do.
He's been a great role model for the game, and I just feel he needs a bit more respect sometimes.
Yeah, I do. Exactly. Yeah, absolutely needs more respect. Family man, lots of kids.
Yeah, but when you're looking at obviously Arsenal, when you're looking at players expected to depart, including Raheem, obviously Neto. I didn't know they even signed him.
No.
Has he played? Then you got Thomas Partey, which I don't
strange one. He played
a strange one.
Yeah.
Jorginho, maybe age.
Yeah.
You know, Kieran Tierney, who I played with at Celtic actually when he was a young whippersnapper.
Injuries.
He's had a load of injuries. Jacob Kiwior
hasn't quite worked for him.
Hasn't quite worked. And Zinchenko. Now I get that.
Yeah.
I get the Zinchenko one.
Is there anyone on that list you would take at West Ham? Obviously, it's not your department, so West Ham fans, it ain't. No one ain't got to stay in this.
Obviously, I'd take Partey.
Yeah,
come on. Yeah, you take Partey.
I think quite a few clubs would take him.
Yeah,
you take Zinchenko as well.
Zinchenko. And Raheem.
Yeah, Raheem as well. You take all of them. Who are we? Hold on a minute. Well, I'll go through the whole list. Give it to you. I'll take the lot.
What happened?
We'll have a cut price deal. But
this is interesting. The strategy is intended to reduce the wage bill and generate funds for potential signings with targets such as Alexander Isak and Leipzig's Benjamin Sesko, who I watched at the Euros, and he is a big old unit.
Is he? Big
unit, runs the channels, aggressive, scores goals. He's the next one that's going to be on people's lips. He's one to watch.
After Isak, yeah?
Yeah. Listen,
of the same, not of the same ilk, but like he'll score goals. He's reliable. He's reliable.
I think he could be where Isak is in 18 months' time if he comes to the Premier League. But he's obviously cheaper than Isak. And how are you going to get him now? I don't know. But he's one for Arsenal fans to keep a look at. They need a centre-forward, Coley, didn't they?
It's quite obvious. It's gaping. It's just there.
Yeah.
You know you need one.
Yeah.
I was surprised they didn't go for one, but probably it's the best time not to do it right now because you're going to get your...
Overpay as well. You'll be overpaying for it.
You're going to be overpaying. So you wait till the summer, identify the right one. Obviously, they've had a change as well in personnel on technical director with with Edu going.
Yeah.
So now obviously they've got probably different ideas on how to mirror that up with how they see the next 5 years now. So they'll probably have to sit down and say, listen, we'll do all our business in the summer, see how that goes. And I think, it might frustrate a few Arsenal fans, but they're just going to have to hold tight for now because they've had a lot of change this season already. So hopefully they can get it together in time for the summer.
They've always had it, Arsenal, where it's been glaring where they need to strengthen and they just don't do it. It's something the club habit. I remember under the Wenger era, they said they had so many number 10s. Remember, like Cesc, Hleb, Arshavin, Rosicky, and they would just keep adding to these number 10s. You're like, go and buy yourself a holding midfielder. Yeah. But they never did it. It's like a stubbornness.
It's their style of football. But I look at their youth football as well.
Yeah.
I've never seen them come out with from the youth.
Yeah.
Clear number 9.
Yeah.
They've never from the youth team. I'm talking about. When's that? Was it Franny Jeffers? I remember.
Yeah. Fox in the box.
But they bought him, didn't they? They bought Franny Jeffers. I'm talking about a player coming from the youth that's been a number 9. Eddie Nketiah.
Yeah, he got close, didn't he?
He got close.
He scored goals. He never really looked like he was going to.
Still trying to think. Is there anybody else?
That's it. See for me now. If I'm looking at my youth,
Hughes. Remember Hughes? It's not Richard Hughes. Stephen Hughes. Was he a number 9?
He was number 9. He was midfielder. Midfielder.
Yeah, there ain't much. So I'm looking at that as a thing and saying, right.
I think that's their DNA.
There's so many staff at Premier League clubs now and academies and going, right. I'm going to get someone in who played number 9, right? And I get all the young coaches around him and I go, right. Look at every striker you got at the club from, say, under 10s up to under 18s and go, right, we need to do individual work programmes with these players, development programmes with these players, with an elite striker talking about movement, runs, technical work, mindset. And I'm saying, and we're going to review it every year to see where they are. Are they scoring goals? Are they scoring... Is Arsenal's number 9?
What type of goals are they scoring?
What type of goals? And what type of goals do they need to start scoring? Yeah. And then you start developing it in. And then all of a sudden, after 4 or 5 years, you should be thinking, we might produce a number 9. You produce one number 9 who can score goals, 20 goals in the Premier League. That's £50 million.
Yeah.
Why would you not
invest in that?
I don't understand.
It's a great project, I think. Like a club like Arsenal, that'd be a great place to start, actually, because they've never had one. They've never had a number 9 come through the ranks. I can't even think. So they must have to have a look at that and think, because they're producing a load of number 10s, I see, when I've watched them, even in the youth. Great players, great on the ball, technically gifted.
Yeah.
But and now number 9, it's either they have one and they don't take them seriously and think that's not our DNA.
Yeah.
That's not the spot we're looking for. We'll go and buy that.
Yeah.
Or they have to look at it from a different perspective. So any young player going to Arsenal will think, I've got no chance of getting in the first team, whether I'm Haaland or not.
Yeah.
They don't like us.
Yeah.
But even now they got money, they're still not buying the number 9. So what chance have I got? They don't like 9s.
Yeah, they don't like 9s.
They don't like that. And the thing about what was the game when they beat was it Manchester City the other day? They beat them 4-0.
Yeah.
They didn't have a number 9 on the pitch.
I know.
So it's actually proving their point. You don't need a number 9.
But if one if they can get one, they'll be getting one, I think.
I agree with you. But, Bridgie, all these people say we don't need number 9s, we don't need number 9s, we still score goals. Yeah, you ain't got number 9, you also ain't got any trophies, mate. I mean, so they just look at it like that. I've simplified it for the lot of you.
There you go, have that.
Wear that, Arsenal. Sorry.
Well, I think that's a good way to end it, because we've got to end it a bit shorter than usual, because Carlton was late.
Yeah, sorry.
But thanks for tuning into the dressing room with Al Arabiya News. Catch you next week.
At Al Arabiya News, we go beyond the headlines.
From the latest breaking news to in-depth coverage of global events.
We're not bought or sold. Nobody owns us.
The loss of life, the destruction of property. The conflicts are such a terrible thing.
Context and analysis to help you see the full picture.
The world is in a very dangerous place.
Join us on Al Arabiya News,
It's very impressive.
where knowledge meets perspective.
Hello and welcome to Global News Today, bringing you exclusive interviews with leading experts every weekday here on Al Arabiya News. I'm Tom Burges Watson. Coming up on today's programme, US President Donald Trump says that Hamas should release all hostages being held in Gaza by Saturday. The alternative, he said, is cancelling the ceasefire and letting, quote, hell break out. Jordan's King Abdullah II meets the US President Donald Trump in Washington. Their talks follow President Trump's suggestion that people from Gaza be resettled in either Jordan or Egypt. And as the UK's new ambassador to Washington, Lord Peter Mandelson, takes up his new job, he backtracks on comments he made about the US President Donald Trump 5 years ago. Hello and welcome to the programme. The Israel-Hamas ceasefire deal in Gaza is looking more fragile than ever. This after the US President Donald Trump issued an ultimatum: release all the Israeli hostages still being held in Gaza, or, quote, let all hell break loose. Well, he also warned that the truce could be cancelled. Let's take a listen to what he said.
Well, I would say this, and I'm going to let that be because that's Israel's decision, but as far as I'm concerned, if all of the hostages aren't returned by Saturday at 12 o'clock, I think it's an appropriate time. I would say cancel it and all bets are off and let hell break out. I'd say they ought to be returned by 12 o'clock on Saturday, and if they're not returned, all of them, not in drips and drabs, not 2 and 1 and 3 and 4 and 2. Saturday at 12 o'clock, and after that, I would say all hell is going to break out. And I don't think they're going to do it. I think a lot of them are dead.
Well, President Trump's comments came after Hamas suspended the release of Israeli hostages over ceasefire violations, and that prompted Israel's defense minister to put the military on high alert. Well, mediators now fear the collapse of the 3-week-old ceasefire deal. Well, for more analysis, we can cross the Jerusalem and speak to reporter Noga Tarnopolsky. Noga, great to have you with us again. Obviously, the war has been paused since the middle of January. Is there now a feeling that the ceasefire deal is in serious jeopardy?
There is. I have to say, here in Israel, there's a growing feeling that the ceasefire deal could be in jeopardy. And there is something close to terror among a significant proportion of the population about what that will mean for the fate of the hostages, the Israeli hostages who remain in the hands of Hamas. The Israeli cabinet just finished a 4.5-hour meeting. And while we haven't heard anything official, we do know that Prime Minister Netanyahu is expected to make a videotaped statement any minute now. And following on several days of Netanyahu's ministers pretty intensively saying they would not vote for a phase 2, which phase 2 was supposed to bring the end of the war, the release of all remaining hostages, living and dead, and the complete withdrawal of Israeli troops from Gaza. It appears that the Israeli government is about to make a kind of pretty dramatic U-turn. And instead of relating directly to the terms of the ceasefire agreement, what we're hearing, and I have to emphasize, it's just what I've been hearing here for the last half hour or so, is that Israel is going to announce that it is adopting Donald Trump's terms, which are very different than the terms of this internationally signed agreement. The agreement was created also by Donald Trump's team. So this is a bit of an astonishing turn, but that's what we're expecting to hear from the Israeli Prime Minister in the coming few minutes.
Right, and of course, President Donald Trump's terms are, he's threatening, quote, to let hell break out if the hostages aren't all released by the weekend, midday on Saturday, to be precise. I mean, do people in Israel agree with that? Do you think a majority of Israeli people think that's the right way to go?
It's kind of impossible to know what all Israelis might think of something that hasn't even been announced. But I do know, I can absolutely tell you that Israelis are terrified and horrified by the idea that hostages, some of whom are dead, one of whom was announced dead today, some of whom are being held in inhuman conditions that their families have heard about just in the recent weeks as the other hostages were released and were able to report on who they had seen or what they knew. Some families here have gotten a much clearer picture. The family, for example, of a young man called Alon Ohel, whose 24th birthday was yesterday. He's known to be kept in chains underground. He has not seen the light of day since October 2023, and he has shrapnel wounds that are untreated all over, including in one of his eyes. So that's the extent of the details that Israelis have heard, and there is profound fear. I really can't underscore it enough that something may happen, a Trump statement, a government decision. There's tremendous fear that something will happen that will jeopardize the lives of the hostages who still remain there.
Yeah, and this use of the word letting hell break loose, or words to that effect, we've heard that from President Trump before. In fact, we heard it on the campaign trail as a threat that some sort of a ceasefire need to be in place by the time he was inaugurated. A lot of people we've spoken to who've been reporting on the ground in Gaza say a threat like that really won't chime with people in Gaza, because they would say, we've already experienced 16 months of hell. I mean, what more could President Trump and the Israeli army do? What could be the next steps?
Yeah, I mean, I understand that feeling completely. That said, we should be careful because things can always get worse in different ways. I'll give you an example from today. Donald Trump's threats to somehow force the hand of Jordan and of Egypt to accept the residents of Gaza, of a Gaza that would be emptied of its population, have brought the Egyptian government today to say that if Donald Trump continues on this route, this would obviate the Oslo agreements. The Camp David agreements, forgive me. The Camp David agreements were the first agreements, a historic document made with American mediation during the Carter presidency. It was the first peace accord between an Arab nation and the State of Israel. This accord, while sometimes warmer and sometimes chillier, this accord has saved untold thousands of lives. From the signing of that accord, there were no more wars and no more killing on the Israeli-Egyptian border, which had been one of the worst, one of the most bloody since the establishment of the State of Israel. And so we're talking right now about risks, certainly risks to the hostages, risks to the social fabric of the State of Israel, risks to Gazans, but we're also talking about I think the visible threat of a kind of shredding of the fabric of this region, which could still, I have to say, get quite a bit worse.
And also potentially damaging for President Donald Trump politically, domestically, but also damaging for America's standing on the world stage. I mean, do you think there's some truth to that?
Yeah, I think it could be very damaging. I'm not sure that what you and I consider damaging is something that impacts President Trump. I'm not, I have no way of knowing what passes through his head. But even in the short period of time since he's returned to the presidency, in my part of the world, we've had a lot of ups and downs. Initially, what we heard really on the day of the inauguration was that his new Middle Eastern envoy, Steve Witkoff, had basically read the riot act to Prime Minister Netanyahu using obscenities and said, "You get this deal done." And so the majority of Israelis who want the hostages back, who are absolutely ready for the war to be over, thought, oh my goodness, President Trump is the one who's going to get us what our government has shied away from for months. Remember that the agreement that was finally realized as of January 19th is the same agreement. The Israeli government says it. It's the same agreement that was on the table at the end of May. And many, many lives have been lost since then. So that started. Then Donald Trump began talking about personally owning Gaza and turning it into a Riviera. In Israel, there was a lot of amusement about this. Prime Minister Netanyahu has boasted about this as a historic achievement for Israel. And now we're seeing the very scary reality that statements by this American president have impact on the region that could radically change reality. It could possibly for the better, but certainly also for the worse. And the people who are going to pay the price are Jews and Arabs in this region.
I mean, just to help us understand and help our viewers understand how we've reached this point. I mean, the ceasefire, took months of negotiations. In recent days and weeks, we've had Hamas and Israel accusing each other of violating the terms of that ceasefire. I mean, what specifically has made things unravel to this extent, do you think?
We could discuss this for an hour, but to keep it brief, both Hamas and the Israeli government had doubts about this agreement. And that's the reason that while it was on the table as of May, neither really jumped at it and agreed to enact it. For Prime Minister Netanyahu, the threat is losing power, because if he agrees to the end of the war, a formal end of the war, and by definition, he would be agreeing to an end of the war while Hamas still exists, because Hamas is who Israel's negotiating with. So that would very much risk his hold on power. Several of his ministers have said, we're not going to vote for that, full stop. And in fact, his Minister for National Security, Itamar Ben-Gvir, quit before, instead of voting on the first phase of the deal. But there are many more ministers now threatening to jump ship. And we've seen over the past year and a half now, almost year and 5 months, that Prime Minister Netanyahu safeguards his own coalition. He views the stability of his own governing coalition as an equivalent to the stability of the country, whatever may be happening on the streets. In terms of Gaza, Hamas has been basically militarily defeated, and its ability to administer Gaza would have been eliminated if Israel and the other interested parties had been able to agree to an alternative force. If Israel had at any point said, we accept X, the Palestinian Authority as was demanded of it by the international community, or any other realistic option, who could have come in to Gaza and taken over power. So it's Israel's refusal to actually name any body that it would agree to allow to administer Gaza that has left Hamas in this kind of nominally administrative position, which gives it a lot more strength than it has in any other respect. And that's the reason we've come, both sides trying to cling on to power. That's how we've come to this point.
Okay, well, we really appreciate you taking the time to speak to us. Really interesting. Noga Tarnopolsky, thank you very much indeed for your time. Well, staying with Gaza, we've had more comments from President Trump during the last 24 hours, which have sparked another degree of global alarm. Well, in a Fox News interview, the president stated that the Palestinians will not have the right to return to the war-torn Gaza Strip under his takeover plan. Well, President Trump also reiterated that the US would own Gaza, describing it as a real estate development for the future.
We'll build beautiful communities for the 1.9 million people. We'll build beautiful communities, safe communities. Could be 5, 6, could be 2, but we'll build safe communities a little bit away from where they are, where all of this danger is. In the meantime, I would own this. Think of it as a real estate development for the future. It would be a beautiful piece of land.
Would the Palestinians have the right to return?
Spent. No, they wouldn't, because they're going to have much better housing, much better. In other words, I'm talking about building a permanent place for them, because if they have to return now, it will be years before you could have it's not habitable. It will be years before it could happen. I'm talking about starting to build, and I think I could make a deal with Jordan. I think I could make a deal with Egypt. You know, we give them billions and billions of dollars a year.
President Trump speaking there to Fox News. Well, the president also said that he wants to relocate Palestinians from Gaza to neighbouring Jordan and Egypt. He also mentioned plans to build 6 new sites outside of the Gaza Strip for people to live in. Well, we're joined now by Dr. Ann Irfan, a historian and academic on the modern Middle East, Palestinian refugee rights and colonial displacement at University College London. Dr. Irfan, you're also the author of Refuge and Resistance, Palestinians and the International Refugee System. We really appreciate you taking the time to speak to us. On Monday, President Trump said, and we just had a clip of it there, that the Palestinians who left Gaza would have no right of return after leaving. What do you make of all of this?
Well, it's unfortunately unsurprising. It's consistent with what we've been hearing from Trump in general, not only in the last 3 weeks, but to be honest, over the entirety of his political career during his first term as well, which is erasure of the Palestinian people as a political community with national rights, denial of the fact that those rights are enshrined in international law. And last week, we heard him talk openly about plans to ethnically cleanse Gaza, to force out the 2 million Palestinians there. And now he has essentially moved to the next stage of that by saying openly that they won't be allowed to return. It's worth keeping in mind, of course, that the state of Israel has denied the Palestinian people their right of return for the last 76 years. So although this is prompting new levels of alarm, it is to some degree an intensification of a longer-term policy.
I mean, does all of this sound to you like there is a carefully considered master plan, or do you get the impression that President Trump is trying out various theories, various solutions, and sort of venting them and seeing what the reaction's like?
Well, I think it's important to keep in mind that whether or not Trump is being serious when he says this, there is a very long history of different plans and moves being made to try and expel the Palestinians en masse from Gaza in particular and Palestine in general. And even in what he said last week, when Trump talked last week about it, he euphemistically talked about, relocating the Palestinians, essentially expelling them. That already engendered and emboldened a whole pre-existing set of discourses and plans that have been around in Israel for a long time about forcibly taking the Gaza Strip. So I think we need to be careful of focusing too much on the question of whether or not Trump has a plan, and we need to keep in mind the fact that whether or not he has a plan, these plans do exist. And in putting this kind of rhetoric and discourse out there, what Trump is doing is giving a new level of international supposed legitimacy to those plans.
And at the same time, potentially damaging the stability of what is a very fragile region, isn't it?
Absolutely, there is no scenario in which the expulsion of more than 2 million people from their homes is going to cause anything but further crisis and instability. But it's also important that we keep in mind that around 70% of the Palestinians in Gaza are already refugees. The majority of the Palestinian people were displaced and expelled from their homes in 1948. So we're not talking about a singular act of displacement or transfer here. We're talking about a long-term repeated condition that has been imposed on the Palestinian people, starting with their original dispossession in 1948.
I mean, have you ever seen the situation in the region looking as precarious as perhaps it does right now?
The situation in the region now, particularly in Gaza, but not only in Gaza, it's also worsening across the West Bank and further afield, is absolutely at alarming levels of what we could barely even refer to as a crisis anymore. We're really talking now about a chronic state of catastrophe. And the refusal of the world powers, particularly the US, to recognize that is deeply alarming. The fact that the Trump administration, in alliance with the Netanyahu government, are insisting on treating the Gaza Strip as a business opportunity rather than a humanitarian and political catastrophe is deeply alarming, actually, not only for the Middle East, but in terms of the bigger international precedents that it's establishing and that people around the world are observing.
Yeah, so, I mean, on the one hand, you've got Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Trump singing more or less from the same song sheet. But then you've also got all the regional leaders singing from another song sheet. And they don't seem to be shifting an inch in terms of what they're saying. I mean, what do you read into the messaging of regional leaders in the Arab world in particular?
For any Arab leader to be complicit in the loss of further Palestinian land, in further Palestinian expulsion, transfer, displacement, is really unthinkable. It would be absolutely a smear would be as an understatement of what it would do to any Arab leaders standing amongst their own people and amongst the Arab world. We've seen continuously over the years that the Palestine cause remains very powerful on the Arab street, and the leaders know that.
I mean, we were speaking yesterday to a former US Middle East negotiator, Aaron David Miller, who said to us that the two-state solution had been on life support for 20 years and that President Trump might preside over its burial. What do you make of that? Do you think that's the case?
I think anyone who's been paying attention knows that the two-state solution, quote unquote, died long ago, starting with the fact that from the very beginning of the Oslo process, Israel continued to build settlements and to take more land while claiming it was working towards a two-state solution. There has not been a viable two-state solution for many years now. There is a one-state reality with an apartheid system that is widely recognized, not only by internationally, but actually increasingly within Israel itself. And it's only really been a farcical reality, a farcical illusion by certain Western leaders to claim that the two-state solution has existed at all. What we have is a one-state reality, and what many people have been fighting for is equality and justice within that one-state reality.
Oh, and what do you think this means for people in the West Bank who must have, you know, obviously everyone's been watching what's been happening in Gaza, but it does seem that the situation in the West Bank is getting increasingly tense. I mean, how do you see events unfolding there?
Yeah, absolutely. The situation in the West Bank has been worsening since October 2023. And in fact, even prior to October, 2023 was the most violent year for the Palestinians since the Second Intifada. More Palestinians were killed in the first 9 months of 2023 than in any previous year since the Second Intifada. And since October the 7th, 2023, and everything since then, it's only got much worse for Palestinians in the West Bank. We are seeing now increasing suggestions that Israel is going to formalize what has long been a kind of, de facto annexation of the West Bank. We are seeing increasing openly state support for settler vigilante armed groups, attacks on Palestinian civilians across the West Bank by both soldiers and settlers, as the Israeli the Israeli state is simultaneously taking advantage of the world being focused on Gaza, and also taking advantage of how it's been emboldened by various global actors' inaction over Gaza to essentially escalate its violence in the West Bank.
In a moment, we're going to be talking about the visit to Washington by the King of Jordan, King Abdullah II. And I'm just wondering whether you anticipate President Donald Trump perhaps having a bit of a rethink, having spoken to other Arab regional leaders and not just the Israeli Prime Minister. Do you see that happening?
Well, Trump is obviously something of a mercurial figure, so it's always difficult to predict exactly what he's going to do. But as you said earlier, regional leaders, including US allies, including the Saudi regime, have been very explicit in their opposition to this plan. The question probably remains as to what we're going to see both Trump and the Arab leaders actually do in action, either to make it happen or to stop it from happening.
How important would you say the King of Jordan's role is in all of this, potentially?
It's potentially quite significant. Jordan has a very significant Palestinian population. It has an important historical and political role. It also has a formally recognized role in parts of Jerusalem. There is an older tradition that Trump is trying to resurrect of expelling the Palestinian people to Jordan. He seems to be flitting between Jordan and Egypt as options at the moment. And once again, as I said earlier, Abdullah will be well aware of the salience of the Palestine cause to Arab people everywhere, and the fact that he cannot be complicit in the displacement, expulsion, and seizure of Palestinian land.
But he's in a really difficult situation because every year Jordan receives something like $750 million in economic assistance from Washington, 350 million in military aid, all of that really important to maintaining stability in the country, and that's something that it prides itself on. I mean, could that as a tool be sufficient to bring the King of Jordan on side with President Donald Trump and have him see the situation through the same prism as him?
It's worth turning that on its head for a minute and also considering why it is that the US spends so much money on ensuring the quote-unquote stability of the Jordanian regime. And a big part of that is because the Jordanian regime is seen, as you put it, as stabilizer, and it's also seen as essentially, to some degree, helping the Israeli government in its promotion of stability too. So although, of course, it is an unequal relationship, the Jordanian regime is not entirely without leverage in these negotiations either. Neither Israel nor the US would want the Jordanian regime, to completely go rogue on this.
Okay, and just lastly, Dr. Irfan, do you think we're looking at the moment at a situation comparable to what we saw happen in 1948 with regards to the Palestinian people?
Unfortunately, in terms of sheer numbers, what we've seen is far worse already than 1948. In 1948, 750,000 Palestinians at least were expelled and displaced from their homes. Since October 2023, we've seen close to 2 million Palestinians in Gaza expelled and displaced from their homes. We also have seen a death toll that is at least in excess of 60,000, but according to some estimates, might be more than twice as much as that. So unfortunately, we are far worse than that already.
Okay, well, thank you very much indeed for taking the time to speak to us. Really appreciate it, Dr. Ann Irfan. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Meanwhile, Jordan's King Abdullah II is today meeting with US President Donald Trump in Washington. Well, their talks follow on from President Trump's suggestion that the Palestinian people be moved from Gaza and resettled in either of Jordan or Egypt. Well, that proposal has been flatly rejected by both countries and by the Palestinians. Well, King Abdullah is the first Arab leader to meet with President Trump since his return to office. Well, for Jordan, this is a delicate situation. While a key US ally, the country is also home to millions of Palestinian refugees. Well, President Trump has threatened to leverage the nearly $1.5 billion in annual US aid to Jordan to force Amman into accepting his Gaza plan. Well, for more, we can speak now to Mick Mulroy, former US Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for the Middle East. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us. The King of Jordan, of course, meeting President Trump today. I mean, would you say these two men, judging based on previous experience, are two men that see eye to eye?
Generally speaking, yes. The U.S. has a very close relationship with Jordan, particularly on the counterterrorism challenge that we've had over 20 years. The U.S. has a lot of forces that are stationed in Jordan. It is a very close relationship, but I agree with your introduction that it's pretty tense right now because what President Trump proposed was a forcible relocation of almost 2 million Palestinians from Gaza into two countries, Egypt and Jordan, that have expressed that they will not take them. So this is going to be certainly the most controversial part of this meeting. And if President Trump holds true on his promise to withhold the $1.4 billion that we provide to the kingdom every year, that will put a serious challenge on his hold, quite frankly, and his authority in his country. This could really destabilize Jordan, something that the United States has sought to avoid for many, many years.
Yeah, how do you think the leadership in Jordan and the people of Jordan feel about how they've been treated by the Trump administration, which is, let's face it, only 3 weeks old?
So as you referenced, it's about 50% of the population in Jordan is of Palestinian descent. So they have a very close tie, obviously, to what's going on in the West Bank and in Gaza. And if this is viewed, and it would be viewed as a forcible relocation of a population from their homeland, which is, by my understanding, unlawful under international law, they're going to have serious protests on their hands in Jordan. And certainly, if he agrees to accept these individuals from Gaza, which would essentially end the chance of Gaza being part of any future Palestinian state, that would be almost catastrophic in the view of the Palestinians that live in Jordan. So this is a very tense situation for King Abdullah, and hopefully there can be some kind of compromise to move forward without really risking the stabilization of Jordan and keeping them as a close ally of the United States, which is mutually beneficial to both countries.
Okay, so in terms of his top priorities on this visit, what do you interpret as being the likely key issues that the king has to try and deliver on?
So I think the king, of course, was really coming originally to talk about the ceasefire and how we go from phase one, which we're in now, but that's being challenged by Hamas' apparent refusal to release hostages on Saturday. But I believe the king's going to want to talk about, okay, how do we get into the second phase, third phase? How do we have a diplomatic path toward a two-state solution? How do we rebuild and reconstruct Gaza? These are all things that essentially do fit into what President Trump laid out, but it's just in a different manner. It's done in a peaceful way without the relocation of Palestinians. I think the king is going to try to get the conversation more on track of where the negotiations were going, which would allow Palestinians, of course, to stay in their homeland, to get to a peaceful solution, to get a new governing body in Gaza that does not have it on their agenda to attack their neighbor in Israel, that they can actually trust the security that's in Gaza, and that there is a diplomatic path toward an eventual two-state solution, which will also be necessary, of course, if there's any real progress on the Saudi-Israel relationship and how they can get to normalization. All those things have to happen, really, to see that going to a conclusion.
Yeah, we were talking about this a little earlier in the program, but I just want to get your perspective. Does it look to you like the ceasefire in Gaza is going to hold, or would you say it's in jeopardy?
I do think it's in jeopardy. Hamas clarified their statement that they would not provide the hostages out as required on Saturday, with the idea that Israel could still make up for the deficiencies as seen by Hamas in delivering humanitarian aid and allowing people to return to the north. I don't know if Israel's not doing that. That's what Hamas said. But certainly there is, I think, some wiggle room here in their statement that we could still see the hostages come out as expected and agreed upon in the ceasefire. So 3, not the entirety. Of course, we'd all like to see all the hostages come out. But in the agreement, it would be 3 on Saturday. If that happens, then hopefully this agreement continues forward and we can eventually get into the second phase negotiations, which apparently have not started yet.
Okay. We are talking here, aren't we, with regards to these talks between President Trump and King Abdullah about 2 key allies holding talks, aren't we? I mean, how important an ally would you say Jordan is to Washington?
Very. I mean, they have been critical, like I mentioned, in our global war against terror, both their abilities, they've deployed forces to combat zones that we are in. They've housed our forces on their territory. And it's really been a very close relationship. The Central Command, which is the command that is responsible for the U.S. military in the Middle East and in parts of Asia, really has a footprint there that is not replaceable, certainly not easily replaceable. And I think the relationship from the United States perspective is very strong and important. And from the Jordanian perspective, we obviously provide them a lot of support, but we also provide them a lot of security. I mean, the one benefit that countries get for having a lot of U.S. military forces is some level of security, as we are there and we will defend ourselves and, of course, the country where we're in. So it is a mutually beneficial, I think, relationship between the two countries, and hopefully this will continue past this meeting today.
Yeah, and of course, Jordan, which houses these US military bases, is doing an important service for the United States in the region. I mean, how likely is it that Donald Trump would pull the plug on military aid and other kinds of aid in the event he doesn't get his way with this Gaza deal? I mean, it would be extremely grave for the United States as well, wouldn't it?
Well, I think if, quite frankly, if we were in the first administration, there'd be a very slim chance. But I think, as you mentioned, we're 3 weeks into the second administration, and we've seen some things that are much more aggressive than we saw in the first, including, the dismantling of USAID, for an example. So I think that there is a possibility that he could withhold this funding. And then, of course, there's also Egypt. Egypt is the other country, and quite frankly, probably easier to relocate people from Gaza. They also receive a significant amount, a little more than what Jordan does from the United States every year, and he's already threatened to withhold that. So I think that is a real possibility. Yes, it might be bluster. It might be to kind of shock the system so that the U.S. has some kind of upper hand in the negotiations. That's potential. I've certainly seen people speculate on that. But if it is actually something that could happen, it could have a significant effect on U.S. national security and our relationships to key allies, in this case, Egypt and Jordan in the region. And of course, if it actually plays out, then I think it'll significantly affect our relationship, the U.S.'s relationship with many of our Gulf partners, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Qatar, when it comes to this actually being carried out.
Yeah, I mean, all of the countries you mentioned, in particular Jordan and Egypt, which are the countries that have been singled out for these relocated or displaced Palestinians by President Trump. I mean, the Arab League, all the nations you mentioned, are pretty resolute, aren't they? There aren't any cracks visible in terms of their resolve and their opinion on this. And I'm just wondering whether President Trump is setting himself up for a kind of an unnecessary impasse here.
He could be. I think you're right. I think they were very clear. There was no, from their statements, it was clear that there was no option in this regard, particularly Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia is the country, quite frankly, that would be the most helpful, likely, when it comes to resources to reconstruct Gaza. They're the country that the Trump administration would rightly want to see enter what they're calling this grand bargain to normalize relationship with Israel, therefore expanding the Abraham Accords, which were a success in the first Trump administration. So this idea, although it could end up in the same place as far as a reconstructed Gaza, with the plan that the ceasefire is, of course, with Palestinians in it. That's the difference, of course, and not under the ownership, which I'm not sure how that would even be the case, of the United States. So there is, I think, a way that our Gulf partners, Saudi Arabia certainly in the lead, would view the path ahead for the Palestinian people, which would, of course, include a Palestinian state. And then there's this new view that President Trump laid out, which would be one without, at least for Gaza, without Palestinians and somehow a territory of the United States, at least from his statements. Those are two entirely different paths. I don't see any support internationally for the President Trump proposal, except for maybe a small element of the right side of the political spectrum in Israel, but certainly not with the Gulf allies, and certainly not with the two countries where Palestinians would be housed under this concept.
And in terms of the message that King Abdullah has brought with him to Washington, saying that displacing the people of Gaza will, quote, spur radicalism, spread chaos in the region, jeopardize peace with Israel, threaten Jordan's very survival. I mean, pretty strong messages. I mean, do you think they're likely to get through to President Trump? And do you think President Trump, now having heard it, face to face from another leader in the region, apart from Prime Minister Netanyahu, perhaps he might change his mind?
Yes, and I do believe President Trump and King Abdullah have a good relationship, and I think there's a lot of mutual respect there. So I think if he says it, in addition to what I would guess, his national security advisor is a very capable, intelligent advisor. And I think he knows the consequences. And I think he's also telling President Trump that. So Mike Waltz, I think Secretary Rubio also very well aware, having served on the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence for many years, knows of the threat that could be coming if the region is destabilized and the jihadist threat goes up substantially. And of course, there is treaties with Jordan, there's treaties with Egypt between Israel. And this is something that could be challenged as well. We could backtrack decades and decades of agreements that have caused stabilization in the region, and this could upend many of those things. Don't know if they'll all happen, but if any of it happens, it would not be good for the interests of the United States and certainly the countries in the region.
Yeah, and use a key word there, stabilization. I was about to say, I mean, Jordan is a country that prides itself on its stability. And that's, again, going to be part of that package of messages, isn't it, that King Abdullah is presenting to President Trump, saying, our stability could very well be in jeopardy if the demographic, the equilibrium of our country is tipped any further than it already has been.
Yes, and that's something the U.S. has been concerned about for many administrations, is to ensure the stability of Jordan, partly because, of course, we do have forces there, but also because King Abdullah has been a staunch ally of the United States in the war against terrorism. It's obviously in his interest as well. So that is a key national security priority for the United States, is to ensure the stability of Jordan and Egypt, for that matter. These are all partners, longtime partners of the United States, and their stability is our stability. So I think that will be presented to President Trump today, both by his team and by the King of Jordan. And hopefully we can work a way out of this current loggerhead, if you will, so that there is a path that does right by the Palestinian people, does right by the Israeli people and their security, and starts working toward a path of reconstruction and a future in which Hamas will have no play in the governing of Gaza.
Okay, just to wrap up, Mick, I mean, fair to say the stakes for King Abdullah are pretty high, aren't they?
Yes, this is a very meaningful meeting that we're going to see today. I think all of these meetings have a potential to have significance, but this one is going into it. And today we'll see a meeting that has serious consequences.
Okay, well, thank you very much indeed for taking the time to speak to us. Mick Milroy, always a pleasure. And finally, the United Kingdom has a new ambassador to Washington. That man is Lord Peter Mandelson. Well, the 71-year-old Labour Party grandee presented his credentials at the State Department on Monday. Well, Mandelson's run-up to the job hasn't been without controversy. Back in December, a close ally of President Donald Trump reacted angrily to the news of Mandelson's appointment, calling him, quote, an absolute moron. Well, the reason being, 5 years earlier, Lord Mandelson had described President Trump as a danger to the world and, quote, little short of a white nationalist. Well, let's find out more now about how the new British ambassador to Washington is walking this diplomatic tightrope. We can speak to Dennis McShane, former Labour MP and Minister of State for Europe, and a friend and former colleague of Lord Mandelson. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Lord Mandelson began his role officially on Monday. And just to be clear for our audience, barring Foreign Secretary, this is about the most prestigious role in the British diplomatic hierarchy, isn't it?
Pretty much so, yep. A very ambassador to the United States. It's always gone to the superstars. I think the last Lord to do it was a man called Lord Halifax, who served in the cabinet during the before the Second World War, and then went to be ambassador in the United States. Churchill didn't like him, so got rid of him to America. Everybody, well, I'm sure Sir Keir Starmer likes Peter. I do. Many people do. Some don't. But it's a role for a very big heavyweight politician. And on any weighing scale, Peter Mandelson has been one of our heaviest of heavyweight politicians on the Labour side here for the last 30 years.
Yeah, I was going to say, just tell us a little bit more about him and who he is, because for an international audience, perhaps people won't all remember back to the days of the Blair government. Just tell us who he is and also how significant he was in that Blair government.
It's pretty simple. Peter, like most big politicians, starts doing politics pretty fast after Oxford. He's a natural leader. He was chairman of the British Youth Organisation, which was a big movement then, in his 20s. He becomes Director of Communications for the Labour Party, aged 35, an MP a few years later. And then he's into the Blair government when it comes in 1997. And in that period, 1980s, 1990s, he's giving first-rate strategic advice to Labour leaders, Neil Kinnock, John Smith, and Tony Blair, and also very cute, smart, tactical advice. Tony Blair said that if nuclear war was declared on Britain, Peter would send me a one-page memo and it would sum it all up and what we should do. And I said, OK, that's a joke, but nonetheless, he is very, very shrewd. Perhaps at times he needs someone to give himself advice. But the other big advantage in Washington right now is he's the first ambassador of that rank with real trade negotiating experience, because he was a European Commissioner for Trade. So believe me, there'll be nobody in Washington who's got quite that level of professional trade negotiation experience as Peter Mandelson.
Right, so you're beginning to give me some clues as to why this job, British ambassador to Washington, has gone to a political appointee and not a career diplomat, in particular to Lord Mandelson. Sounds like he brings plenty to the table, and at quite a delicate moment, I think it's fair to say.
Yes, indeed. But I think he'll fit in well with the Trump-Musk scene, in the sense that he is larger than life. He's very theatrical. He's an immense charmer. He'll size up Donald Trump very fast and align himself, at least in conversation. He has to represent British government policy, of course. And I'm sure make the president, if he sees him, ambassadors don't really regularly see the president of the United States unless the king arrives or the prime minister, and the same for all countries. But if he's in contact with Donald Trump, he'll say something that's sort of quite witty, a little bit sort of sly, quite cool, that I expect Mr. Trump will remember. And, I don't think Trump really knows much who he was. And if Donald Trump worried about everybody who'd said something nasty about him in the last 20 years, he'd be a shaking wreck. And that's one thing he isn't at the moment, is he?
Yes, but I think he does remember those words. Certainly some people close to President Trump remember those words from 2019 when Lord Mandelson called him little short of a white nationalist and a racist. I mean, very hard to walk back on those comments. I heard him having a go at it. How do you rate his success in walking that back?
Listen, I'm talking to you from the European Union. You want me to list the leaders of the European Union, individual presidents, the European Commission people, other British politicians. Boris Johnson called Donald Trump a man wholly unfit to hold the office of President of the United States. And Boris Johnson is meant to be on the Trump wavelength and a fan and a follower of Donald Trump. I'm afraid Mr. Trump has attracted lots and lots of very, very fruity comments in his career, especially in the last, decade and a half or so as he's aimed for high political office. And if he really spends 1 nanosecond worrying about them, he'll never be able to do his job. So I wouldn't worry about that. The real question will be British tariffs on Great Britain, other questions about Ukraine, where Britain really wants and is one of the leading countries in Europe in saying to Mr. Putin, back off, withdraw, give up, stop this insane criminal war on the European continent. And I think Britain will stick strongly to that position and is one of the leaders in Europe, whereas there's some indication that some people in Mr. Trump's circles want to appease Mr. Putin and draw stumps on Ukraine. I'm not sure that metaphor will be understood in the White House, but in other words, leave Mr. Putin as the winner. So that will be a very tricky thing for Peter Mandelson as well.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to need thick skin, isn't he? Because before he arrived, he was being called, quote, an absolute moron by a Trump aide. I mean, that's not an easy thing to hear, not a very welcoming pair of words there. I mean, does he have the thick skin he's going to need to brush off comments like that?
I heard at a meeting of all the Labour MPs early on in the Blair government, a left-wing guy, a nice guy, intelligent guy, stand up and say to Tony Blair and Peter Mandelson and all the other MPs, well, we've all been reading the book just written by Peter Mandelson about what Labour should do. It's like taking the railroad across Canada, miles and miles of nothing. Now, if Peter could laugh that off face-to-face in front of Tony Blair from someone, I rather expect that some unknown minor functionary, because trouble with journalists, they can always find somebody to say something nasty about a top-flight politician. It's part of the trade, and Peter, believe me, is not thin-skinned.
Well, it wasn't hard to find. The comment was on Twitter and put out there, and it did attract a certain amount of attention. But there is another shadow lingering over this appointment, and I'm wondering whether you think Lord Mandelson is going to be feeling it. And I'm talking about Nigel Farage, who, again, for the benefit of our audience, who might not all know, he is the leader of the UK Reform Party. And Donald Trump made it known in the past that he was, you know, his kind of guy and the sort of person he would like to see as British ambassador to Washington. I mean, difficult, do you think, for Lord Mandelson to know he wasn't perhaps the first choice of ambassador for the host country?
It's not up to a host country to decide who is sent to them as an ambassador. That's the choice, if you want to be very pompous about it, of the king or the queen in Britain, the president of France. It's not the host country who selects the ambassador. I wrote an article at the time. I can't put it up on the screen. And, of course, the only source for the story that Donald Trump wanted Nigel Farage to be the ambassador was indeed dear old Nigel himself. I mean, if there's one man who promotes himself even more than Peter Mandelson, it's Nigel Farage. But I think in the eyes of Donald Trump, he clearly knows who Nigel Farage is. He's met him in the past, especially when after the Brexit referendum, because Mr. Trump is pretty anti-European Union. We know that. But Mr. Trump, above all, respects success. Nigel Farage has been trying now for 30 years to become a power in British politics. At the last election, he got himself and just 4 other rather odd fruitcake right-wingers elected as MPs. It's got a grand name, Reform Party, but it's just a bunch of eccentrics. Sir Keir Starmer got over 400, one of the biggest election victories for a single party in British political and parliamentary history. Now, as I say, Donald Trump isn't Keir Starmer's cup of tea, but he said very nice things about him since they met and since they had conversations. And I think Mr. Trump respects success. Peter Mandelson is very, very good on the job he does, media, strategic politics. Nigel Farage is very, very good at self-publicity, but as a politician who's actually won power, won seats, got close to the centre of power, I'm afraid Nigel, bless him, isn't also ran, whereas Mr. Trump has been in the White House 2 times.
Well, nevertheless, reform continues to attract millions of votes and is doing pretty well in the polls. Just want to ask you about something different, though. I mean, we were talking at the beginning about how prestigious this job is as, you know, Britain's perhaps most prestigious diplomat outside of London. The house that he'll be living in, that in itself is a tool, isn't it, of British soft power in the United States. I mean, I don't know if you agree with that, but just tell us why that might be the case.
Oh, sure. I stayed in there several times. It's a Lutyens house. It's a very famous British architecture of the high camp imperial era. He built the great Viceroy's Palace in New Delhi at the time when India was sort of part of the British Empire, and the Indians all had to bow and scrape to their white masters. And you go there, and it's like a sort of pantomime set. It's something like out of Gilbert and Sullivan. It's extraordinary. And the house on Mass Ave, also next door to the Vice President's mansion, or maybe that's the embassy. The embassy's a rather dull building, but it's a great building. You sweep in. I don't know if you've seen that Netflix series, The Diplomat, but it conveys some of it. And I'm sure Peter will be a host extraordinaire. I think you'll find he'll start giving the best parties, inviting the cutest people from all walks of American life, and that people will want to be seen with. As I say, it's unusual for a president to interface directly with an ambassador, any ambassador, but I expect the British Embassy in Washington now is going to be the go-to place for the parties, the swish dinners, the receptions, the artists, the writers, the intellectuals, and all the power players in Team Trump.
All right, just to wrap up, sounds to me like you think what's often called the special relationship between London and Washington is alive and well and is in safe hands with Lord Mandelson in that residence in Washington.
I never use that phrase. I keep hearing it here. I used to hear prime ministers use it and politicians use it. I worked in America. I was the minister representing Britain to the United States, and I was there in the State Department, principally, obviously, as a Foreign Office minister. But I knew Bill Clinton. I had a long talk with Joe Biden, with sort of similar political backgrounds to begin with, and got on with them very well. And President Bush was always a very polite person. I never heard an American president talk about the special relationship. It's a sort of English obsession, but there is no doubt, for all the historical reasons we know. I mean, America, after all, is an offshoot of England. It's the same language. It's fighting in 2 world wars to defeat nationalist right-wing politicians, German Kaisers and Hitler, big right-wing politician in 2 world wars. And sharing a lot of ideas and intellectual ideas and what a university should be. So, yeah, it's a pretty good connection. But Trump is going to steer his own course. Mr. Trump will steer his own course. His mother comes from the Western Isles of Scotland, and he bought her a small, what the Scots call a croft. We would call it a cottage up there. And she used to go back for 2 or 3 months a year and meet old friends. And she's very popular, well liked on the Western Isles. So Mr. Trump's got that connection to Britain, not England, mark my words. So I think hopefully it'll work out. But honestly, Britain has got so many problems. We've inherited a disastrous economy after the incredible Brexit-era prime ministers, Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, all of these people who just did so much damage to the British economy. That is our particular problem we have to solve. Whether Mr. Trump's interested in helping Britain become great again, make Britain great again, I don't know. We'll see. But Peter Mandelson, certainly in my judgment, and I'm not just a friend, I'm interested in the future of my country. He's the right man at the right time in what's going to be a very difficult job.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed for your time, Dennis McShane. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Well, that is all we have time for on Global News today. Thank you very much for watching. Be sure to join us again tomorrow for more exclusive interviews. Until then, bye-bye.
From the White House to Gaza, Kiev to Beijing, elections, economics and the environment compete with conflicts and other complex issues for our attention. In an age of fake news, deepfake and artificial intelligence,
they've got to have a vote and a say.
It's important to look beyond the loudest voice to understand the truth. From newsmakers to groundbreakers,
My campaign is going very well.
Presidents, prime ministers, princes and peacemakers, and cultural tastemakers.
As Arabs, as Middle Eastern, we're too emotional.
Join me on The Riz Khan Show for empowering conversation.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome, of course, to the Saudi House. Today, we're going to be talking about climate change, Saudi Arabia in particular, their contributions to addressing global environmental challenges. His Excellency Abdullah Al-Jubeir is here with me. Your Excellency, it's wonderful to see you as always.
It was a pleasure.
I want to kick off, though, by asking you about what we've seen in just the last 48 hours. U.S. President Donald Trump signing a raft of executive agreements and pledging to withdraw from the Paris Accords. In your mind, does that damage the world's ability to fight climate change?
I don't believe so. I think there are different ways of achieving the objective that we all want, and countries can pursue whatever path they believe is best for them. I think the important thing is the bottom line. The Trump administration in the first term actually did a lot to reduce carbon in the United States. So this is a very positive development. I think the important thing is that we look at these discussions as cooperative discussions, not as negotiations, because we're all trying to find the most optimum path forward to dealing with the challenges in a way that's unemotional, that's logical, that's scientific, so that we can overcome this challenge that we have. We're all in this together. There are no winners or losers. We all win or we all lose. That's the attitude that we in Saudi Arabia bring to this discussion.
Just 2 years ago here at the World Economic Forum, Al Gore described what was happening in climate as boiling oceans and rain bombs. A lot of people pushed back on that at the time privately, but they didn't necessarily feel comfortable doing so on a public stage. In your mind, how are these words changing when we describe climate?
We have a challenge that is before us with regard to climate change and with global warming. Nobody can dispute that. And the impact that it has on not only our climate, but on our politics, on conflicts, on not in dispute. I think what we need to adopt is a rational, scientifically based conversation, not grandstanding and not threatening, because it will be like the shepherds who cried wolf too many times and then nobody believed them. We know we have a problem. We know we have a challenge. So now that we know this, let's not talk about how it's going to kill all of us. Let's talk about how we extricate ourselves from this problem. We can do it by education. We can do it by more rational policies. We can do it by more efficient production of energy. We can do it by more efficient use of energy. We can do it by investing in alternative sources of energy. We can use it by combating desertification, by land restoration. We can use it by funding research to experiment with transformative technologies. And we are in Saudi Arabia doing all of this. We are setting aside 30% of our territory, land as well as sea, to be protected areas so that they're untouched. We are investing in greening. We are investing in transforming waste into energy. We are investing in solar, in hydro, we're looking seriously at nuclear power. We're investing in capturing carbon from the atmosphere. We're investing in a blue economy. We're investing in our seas and sustainable fishing. We are doing all of it because of two reasons. One, we live on this planet. We breathe the same air everybody does, and it's important for us that it's a healthy planet. And two, it's also very profitable. So there's an economic incentive to do this. And we have taken our experience and we expanded it into initiatives like the Middle East Green Initiative, which includes more than 22 countries, to teach countries how to incorporate the circular carbon economy approach so they can deal with environment and climate change issues the way we have been, so that we all benefit in our region. Because, as I said, we all win or we all lose. We are all in this together, and climate And pollution doesn't differentiate between one country and another. That's why the effort has to be regional and it has to be global.
Would you say then perhaps that the election of Donald Trump and his presidency is the great reset that the climate conversation needed?
I hope it would be, because I think everybody is concerned about environment and everybody is concerned about climate, and it's important that all of us, individuals and nations and companies, do everything we can to deal with this challenge. But we will deal with this challenge. We have the technology, we have the financial resources. We need the political will to engage in a positive, cooperative conversation where we all come up with the best way forward, rather than engage in an emotional, argumentative, political scoring, hypocritical conflict that serves nobody.
Speaking of hypocrisy, over the last several days in the Financial Times, there's been reporting that billions of dollars have fled out of green ETFs and green investing. In your mind, are they jumping the gun there?
I don't know why they pulled out and what investment criteria they have. I do know that in Saudi Arabia, the investments that we have made in renewable energy, in solar, in turning waste into energy, in when we're looking at nuclear, when we're looking at efficiencies, ensuring that we don't have flaring of oil and gas, that we don't have leakages, that those have been extremely profitable. We have huge investments in electric vehicles. We're looking at producing electric batteries. We're looking at storage facilities. And for us, it's been these have been very profitable investments. So we are committed to continuing to invest in this. But in terms of the withdrawal of funds, I don't know what was the reason for them investing in those funds in the first place. I don't know what the returns are, so I'm not in a position to comment on it. But what I can say is it could be a function of people getting excited, wanting to do politically the right thing, and then realizing maybe the funds should have gone somewhere else.
When you think about what Saudi Arabia is doing in this fight against climate change and to make the planet, frankly, a better place, it was interesting. His Royal Highness Prince Abdulaziz just a few days ago during the Future Minerals Forum in Saudi Arabia talked about exporting enriched uranium, yellow cake. That's politically dicey, if you will, as you know. In your mind, how do you explain those kinds of exports to the world?
Very simple. We are a large energy producer in the world. We want to be an exporter of energy to the world, whether that energy is oil or gas, whether that energy is solar, whether that energy is electricity, whether that energy is hydro, whether that energy is nuclear. We want to have a nuclear program in Saudi Arabia to produce energy. We have between 1% and 4%, according to estimates, of the world's uranium deposits in country. It makes a lot of sense to exploit those resources economically by mining it. It makes even more sense that once you mine it, that you engage in the processing to turn the uranium into fuel that you can sell at a higher price. So that includes all of the steps in turning uranium from dirt into energy. And it involves taking advantage of the associated industries that come with this and taking advantage of the profits that come with this. We do not want to be a country where mining companies come in, dig up the soil, remove it, do all the processing and all the refining and all the producing of energy outside. We end up with a hole and we take less than 10% of the value chain. We want to benefit. Jobs, associated industry, and profits. And we believe that we can do it, as does the International Atomic Energy Agency, in a way that has nothing to do with producing nuclear weapons. Our objective is energy and profit.
Tell me this, speaking of weapons, in the years past, we've often talked about how Saudi Arabia in the 70s and Russia just a few years ago was using energy as a weapon. In your mind, how vulnerable are we today in our energy systems? And I'm talking about whether it be the enormous amount of energy that AI, as we know, is going to require, whether it be just oil markets generally. How vulnerable are we today in our energy markets?
I don't believe, I wouldn't describe it as vulnerable. I would describe it as we are looking at an increase in demand that needs to be filled somehow. Because if it's not filled, then you're going to see a huge spike in prices. And AI and data centers require a lot of energy, and that energy has to come from somewhere. We in Saudi Arabia want to be a hub for these centers. We have the land. We want to be able to, we can produce that energy using renewable energy, solar energy, other energy, and we can do it efficiently. And we believe that given our geographic location, we can have the connectivity to be able to send it abroad. So this is one of the priorities for us. So I think that this is how I would look at it. In terms of oil weaponizing energy, we have maintained for many decades that oil is not a weapon. It's not
anymore.
It's not a weapon. You can't shoot it. You can't fire it. You don't take it to the battlefield. It's a commodity, and it's a precious commodity. It relies on supply and demand, sets the price. We want to be a responsible producer. We have been a swing producer where we try to keep the markets in balance as much as we can to reduce the massive fluctuations in the price of oil, so that it makes it easier for people to invest, to borrow money, and to return their investment, and also to plan long term. That provides stability for the global financial markets, which serves us because we are big investors and we are energy producers, and we want stability in the financial markets.
Yeah. Donald Trump is widely expected to visit Saudi Arabia in the near future. What kind of conversation do you want to have with him regarding energy and climate?
President Trump is most welcome in Saudi Arabia anytime he wants to come. And I think the conversations between Saudi Arabia and the United States, we have been allies, we have been partners for 80 years. We have huge interests, whether it's bilaterally in terms of trade, investment, in terms of cultural exchanges, in terms of students, in terms of whether it's regionally. We work very closely together on bringing peace and stability in a region, maintaining security in a region, whether it's globally, the same issue. We have very important relationships on technology, on energy, on investments. We are large investors in the U.S. economy. American companies are large investors in the Saudi economy. So it is a huge relationship, and it has many, many dimensions to it. And every time our two countries have worked closely together, they have been able to achieve great things, whether in terms of stability and security and peace regionally and globally, and in terms of prosperity for both countries when it comes to trade and investment issues.
There's a lot of speculation about what the U.S.-China relationship will be in the future. Saudi Arabia, of course, has a strong relationship both with the United States and, of course, with Beijing. How worried are you about the possibility that a trade war between the United States and China could derail your agenda as a country?
We have very strong relationships with both countries. Our relationship with the U.S. is a strategic relationship. China is our largest trading partner. We believe that stability in the global financial system and the global market serves everyone, and we hope that the two countries will be able to negotiate their differences, because a trade war does not serve the interests of either. And I believe that we have seen in the past that the two countries have been able to negotiate or resolve their issues and reach understandings through by discussing it rather than by turning it into trade wars.
Talk to me a little bit about the region when it comes to climate. Obviously, we see the UAE made a great deal of strides, obviously hosting COP28. In your mind, as Saudi looks forward to its own hosting of a COP, what are some of the things you're hoping that the region is able to achieve?
Our region, the Gulf region in particular, has done, I think, an outstanding job in terms of dealing with climate, the challenges of climate, as well as land degradation, as well as biodiversity. So the Rio Trio, the three COPs, we have invested tremendous resources in it, beginning with education and all the way to implementation. In Saudi Arabia, we have more than 70 initiatives domestically that deal with all of these issues. We have initiatives globally. I mentioned the Middle East Green Initiative. We established the Global Water Organization. That was an initiative by His Royal Highness the Crown Prince to bring clean water and how we use water more efficiently to as many people as possible. We are part of the Methane Pledge. We are involved with cleaning oceans, and we're involved with reversing pollution of plastics. We are involved in a lot of initiatives, and we have provided investments to many countries around the world to help them with resilience, to help them with beefing up infrastructure, to help them with desalination, to help them with on and on and on. We are doing a lot of things. We hosted COP16, the Earth COP, was a land degradation and drought COP, and our objective was to raise the awareness level and highlight the link, the nexus between land degradation and security. If you have land degradation, people don't have food. They move to places where they can plant food. Chances are people live there. You have conflict, you have bloodshed, you have violence, you have extremism, you have terrorism, you have migration. The migrants end up in a country where there could be a reaction that leads to extremist politics. So when you look at extremist politics in Europe, you can trace its linkage to a particular place in Africa or in the Middle East. And you can trace the origins of that conflict to drought. You look at the countries in the Sahel, 90% of the Chad River evaporated since the 1960s. It created dislocations for millions of people who moved, created conflict, and then we're paying the price. Darfur, Sudan, has been engaged in a conflict for almost 40 years. And it started with drought, and it turned into a conflict, ethnic conflict, civil war. People are paying the price, and our objective is to highlight this to people, invest early in land restoration, and avoid the consequences that will cost us 50 times more to deal with than if we had dealt with it at the outset. And the irony of all of this is investing $1 in land restoration generates between $7 and $30 in profit. This is better than investing in high tech. Why don't people do it? And this is what we're trying to show people. And this is not an issue, land degradation, that concerns North Africa and the Middle East. Germany has a problem with the waters of the Rhine. Southern Europe has problems with drought. This is an issue that impacts everyone. Sweden gets dust from the Sahara Desert, as does Costa Rica. We get dust from as far away as the Chinese desert. And we have a lot around us. So this is a global issue, and it's straightforward to deal with. We just need to focus on it and get it done, and this is what we're trying to do in Saudi Arabia.
You may remember President Biden's Secretary of Defense, as well as the current Secretary of Defense in the United Kingdom, have cited climate change as their number one worry for the planet, their number one concern. Now that we have Trump in the White House, is climate your number one concern for the planet?
Ours?
Yeah.
I believe for everybody, the issue of climate change, the issue of whether it's too little water or too much water, the issue of rising temperatures, everybody acknowledges this.
But is it the number one concern facing us?
I think it certainly is. If it's not the number one, it is right up there, because it impacts everything. It impacts For example, desertification impacts the reflection of the sun, impacts weather patterns over the Atlantic, impacts the frequency and intensity of hurricanes in the Caribbean, impacts weather climates around the world. Dust can do the same thing. And also the climate issues can impact what happens in the oceans, and the oceans are our biggest reservoir for carbon. And that impacts, again, the rain patterns. And so it's a cycle that impacts everything we do, and it's linked to economic development, it's linked to wars and conflict, it's linked to prosperity. 800 million people on the planet are undernourished. The amount of land we can grow food on shrinks. Populations are rising. So we're heading towards conflict. We have to fix these issues. And I don't believe that anyone disagrees with this. I believe the differences have to do with what's the right way to move forward in tackling these issues. And I think that grandstanding and emotions and hypocrisy and threats and shaming and naming and finger pointing doesn't get us anywhere. Rolling up our sleeves and planting trees, redesigning our cities, investing in technology, investing in alternative sources of energy, pointing out the benefits and the profitability of that path is what will get people to move in towards the right direction. And when we can deal with these issues, they will have a direct positive impact on security, which will then have an impact on stability and peace.
It's interesting, over the last several days leading up to his inauguration, Donald Trump talking about Greenland. I've spent a lot of time in Russia and Ukraine, as you know. And when we talk about climate and what's happening in the Arctic, the ice, surprise, surprise, is melting. That raises security concerns. Russia has the most military intelligence hardware in the Arctic, as well as oil and gas infrastructure, as you know. In your mind, are we living in dangerous times as a result of climate change?
I think we are always living in challenging times. The history, unfortunately, of mankind has been one of wars, not peace and stability. I believe that the conflicts may shift from one region or another depending on the century we live in, but war has been a constant in our history, unfortunately. I think we are moving towards a global society, a global village. I don't want to call it village, it's too big for a village, where we now recognize that something happening on one end of the world has a direct impact on something on the other end of the world, which we never had before. How long did it take to get mail from Europe to the United States 150 years ago? Now it takes a nanosecond to get pictures and voicemail and from the Amazon forest to Siberia because of technology. How long? So now we deal with the issues of that go beyond our borders, that impact all of us positively or negatively. COVID doesn't differentiate between male, female, between Muslim, Jew, Christian, between Asian, African, European. It doesn't differentiate. We are all its target. And unless we all work together to contain it, we can't. And we did work together in spite of our differences. Maybe not ideal, but in a very effective way to contain it and push back against it. So we are, in one hand, yes, business as usual, challenging world, you called it dangerous world, but also business as unusual, which is a recognition that we need to deal with each other to handle global issues like pandemics, like climate, like transportation, and that those issues can only be handled if we work together. So on one hand, you're seeing the world coming together much more closely than before, while at the same time we're the same in the sense of our tensions. And my hope, and I believe this is where we're heading because I'm an optimist, is that as we learn and more, as we learn of the benefits that we get by working together, the side of the side of the equation that spells cooperation grows, and the side of the equation that spells conflict gets diminished. Because where does conflict get us? Nowhere. We can have conflict for 30 years and we'll be worse off than we were when we started. Whereas if we have cooperation, technology, artificial intelligence, trade, in 30 years we can be many, many times wealthier than where we are today. Which vision do you want? Going forwards and upwards, or going backwards and downwards?
Are we, as he says, safer, the world, with Donald Trump in the White House?
I don't see why people talk about this. I think, yes, the world is safer. The world is safer with anyone in the White House. The world is safer because the world is beginning to recognize that we need to work together. We need to deal with challenges that are beyond us as nations or as ethnic groups or as religious groups, and that we have to deal with problems or challenges or dangers as humanity, that we can't escape that. And I believe that we are beginning to do this, and we will continue to do more of this. And so I'm hopeful that our children and grandchildren will be living in a world that is more together and more calm and more prosperous and more healthy than the one we live in.
Your Excellency, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you.
At Arabiya News, we go beyond the headlines.
From the latest breaking news to in-depth coverage of global events.
We're not bought or sold. Nobody owns us.
The loss of life, the destruction of property. The conflicts are such a terrible thing.
Context and analysis to help you see the full picture.
The world is in a very dangerous place.
Join us on Arabiya News,
It's very impressive.
where knowledge meets perspective.
From the White House to Gaza, Kiev to Beijing, elections, economics and the environment compete with conflicts and other complex issues for our attention. In an age of fake news, deepfake and artificial intelligence,
They've got to have a vote and a say.
it's important to look beyond the loudest voice to understand the truth. From newsmakers to groundbreakers,
My campaign is going very well.
presidents, prime ministers, princes and peacemakers, and cultural